While my daughter lay unconscious in the snow, a car sat packed and running in the garage behind her. She was 8 months pregnant, planning a nursery, unaware her husband had been planning something else entirely for weeks. Neighbors later told police they'd seen him loading boxes at odd hours, always after she'd gone to sleep. At the ER, he said the baby hadn't survived. The morgue said no baby had ever come through their doors. But let me start from the beginning. Thank you for being here with me. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell me, have you ever trusted your instincts when everyone else said you were wrong? Your stories truly matter. Just a quick note. Certain details in this story are fictionalized to bring out the lesson. The message is what I hope stays with you. The phone shattered the silence at 11:47 p.m. And I knew before answering that my daughter's life had just broken apart. I'd been sitting in the kitchen where Shirley used to make midnight tea. 68 years old with 43 years at the aerospace plant still in my calloused hands. 6 months since cancer took her. The house had learned to be quiet. The caller ID showed Brent. My son-in-law never called this late. "It's Celeste," Brent said, his voice hitting that particular brand of controlled panic I'd heard in younger engineers faking confidence during failed launches. "Hospital. You need to come now." "What happened? Is she?" "There's a problem with the baby." His breath caught. Too perfectly timed. "I can't just get here." The line went dead. I sat there 3 seconds. Phone still pressed to my ear, cataloging inconsistencies. Brent's panic sounded rehearsed. Not the raw terror of a man whose pregnant wife was in crisis, but something practiced. Urgent. Yes. Genuine. That question propelled me toward my truck keys. The night air hit me 38 degrees in Sun City West, which was cold enough, but the wind carried something else. Snow. Actual snow. The kind we got maybe twice a decade. Fat flakes already accumulating on my windshield. Brent hadn't told me which hospital. Hadn't given details about the problem. Hadn't stayed on the line long enough for me to ask the questions a father should ask. Why would a man whose wife is in medical crisis hang up before giving the hospital name? I knew the answer because I knew my daughter. Banner Good Samaritan. Celeste had mentioned it a dozen times, the hospital with the best NICU in Phoenix, pre-registered back in October. Brent would have taken her there, but he should have told me that. Should have told me what floor, what happened, whether she was stable, unless he didn't want me asking questions. I merged onto I-10 southbound, wipers fighting the snow, and felt Shirley's absence like a physical ache. She'd been gone 6 months, but I could still hear her voice from 3 years ago, the night Brent proposed. Watch him. Warren. Men who smile that much are hiding something. I'd dismissed it. Told her Brent worked in financial services and had to maintain client relationships. That the constant grin was professional polish, not deception. You were right. Shirley. I said to the empty cab. You were always right. The snow thickened. I slowed to 50, watching red taillights bloom through the white curtain. My hands gripped the wheel with the same steady pressure I'd used for 4 decades on precision machinery controlled. Deliberate, refusing to let emotion compromise function. 8 months pregnant. Problem with the baby. Those words could mean anything from minor complications to the kind of emergency that ends with a chaplain in the waiting room. And Brent had delivered them with theatrical urgency, then hung up before I could respond. 6 months without Shirley. And the first real crisis hits when her wisdom is most needed. I'd spent my career tracking systems, understanding how components interacted, recognizing when something operated outside normal parameters. Shirley had taught me the same principles applied to people. She'd had a gift for reading what wasn't said, for sensing misalignment in someone's words and actions. Brent Harding had always been misaligned. Perfect on paper. 38. Financial services representative. Clean-cut and respectful. Never missed a family dinner. But Shirley had watched him across our Thanksgiving table 2 years ago and counted how many times he checked his phone. 17 times during a 2-hour meal. "A man that distracted is running from something," she'd said. I'd defended him. Work stress, client demands. Now. Crawling through January snow toward a hospital I hadn't been told to go to, I wondered what else I'd been blind to. The exit for Banner Good Samaritan appeared through the storm. I took it. Tires crunching over snow already 2 inches deep. Phoenix didn't have snowplows. The city would be paralyzed by morning. My phone buzzed. Text from Brent. ER entrance. 2 words. No update on Celeste. No reassurance she was stable, that the baby was okay. Just a location. The answer hit me like the snow against the windshield. He never wanted me to call 911. If Celeste had gone into labor with complications, if the baby was in distress, if any legitimate medical emergency was happening, Brent should have called 911 first. Paramedics, ambulance, trained responders. That's what you do, but he'd called me instead. A 68-year-old retired machinist, 40 minutes away in good weather. An hour in this storm. He'd called me and given just enough information to send me driving blind through the snow, but not enough to let me call for the help Celeste might actually need. Unless she didn't need help. Unless the emergency wasn't medical. Unless Brent needed me to arrive believing something that wasn't true. I pulled into the parking lot, snow swirling through the red and white glow of the emergency entrance. Through the glass doors I could see the waiting room, the triage desk, the fluorescent brightness that made everything look like a stage set. Somewhere in there. My daughter was either fighting for her life or already safe. Somewhere in there, my grandson was either in distress or already born. Somewhere in there, Brent Harding was waiting to tell me something that would either shatter me or confirm every instinct screaming that his midnight call had been a performance. I turned off the engine. Snow settled on the windshield, softening the lights, muffling the world. Shirley's voice echoed one last time. "When someone shows you who they are, Warren, believe them." I opened the truck door and stepped into the storm, not knowing whether I was rushing toward a birth or a crime scene. The only certainty was that whatever waited inside those fluorescent doors, the truth was something Brent desperately needed me not to see. Brent stood waiting in the fluorescent corridor outside the ICU with red-rimmed eyes, and a story I would spend the next 4 days proving was a lie. He intercepted me before I reached the elevators, moving with that particular urgency of someone who needed to control the narrative. At 38, Brent Harding had the kind of polished competence that worked in financial services. Pressed shirt even at 1 a.m. Tie loosened just enough to suggest distress without looking disheveled. He was practicing concerned grief the way he'd practiced confident sales pitches his whole career. "Warren, thank God you're here." His voice broke perfectly on my name. She's stable now, but what happened?" I kept my voice level. "You said problem with the baby." She fell. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture too deliberate to be unconscious. "On the driveway. We've had that freezing rain. You know, the ice. And she was walking to the car for her hospital bag. Went down hard. Triggered early labor. I waited. 43 years in aerospace had taught me that people fill silence with truth or elaborate lies. And the difference is in the details. Paramedics got her here fast. But the baby," his voice caught again. "He came too early. They tried everything. Warren, the whole team worked on him. But he didn't make it. My grandson, gone." The words should have shattered me. Maybe they did. But underneath the grief was something colder, sharper. Brent was answering questions I hadn't asked yet. "Where is he now?" I managed. "They've already taken him to the morgue." The response came too fast, like he'd been waiting for exactly that question. "Hospital policy for stillbirths. Celeste is sedated. The doctor said it's better if she doesn't wake up to this right away. The trauma of the fall, the delivery, the loss. Her body needs rest before her mind has to process it. He'd answered the morgue question before I'd finished forming it in my mind. I need to see my daughter. Of course, room 318, third floor. Brent stepped aside, but his hand touched my shoulder. Warren, I'm so sorry. I know you and Shirley were excited about. Don't. The word came out harder than I intended. Don't bring Shirley into this. I left him in the hallway and took the elevator to the third floor. The ICU ward smelled like antiseptic and recycled air, sounds muffled by carpet and acoustic tiles designed to absorb the noise of crisis. A tired-looking nurse named Rodriguez, according to her badge, glanced up from the station. Room 318, I said. Celeste Harding, family only. I'm her father. She nodded toward the hallway. 10 minutes, she needs rest. Celeste lay in ICU bed 318, looking smaller than her 35 years. Blonde hair matted with sweat. The home health aide competence that usually defined her, completely erased by whatever had happened in the hours before midnight. An IV dripped clear fluid into her left arm. Monitors beeped steady rhythms. Her eyes were closed. But it was the bruising that stopped me cold. Upper arms, both sides. Dark purple marks shaped like fingers. Someone had grabbed her, hard. I moved closer. My machinist's mind cataloging injury patterns the way Shirley had taught me when our kids were small. Palm abrasions, raw and angry. Not the kind you get catching yourself during a fall. The kind you get pounding on something. A wall, a door. No hip bruising, no lower back trauma. Nothing on her legs that suggested impact with ice or pavement. This wasn't a fall. This was a fight to get inside. Dad. Her voice barely registered above a whisper. I leaned close, catching the chemical smell of whatever they'd given her for pain. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. So cold. Her eyes fluttered but didn't open. Couldn't get back in. Back in where? He locked the door. The words came slow, pulled from somewhere deep beneath the sedation. Baby was crying so loud. Why won't he let me? Celeste. I gripped her hand. He was gentle despite the urgency screaming in my chest. What door? What happened? But she was already fading. Pulled back under by whatever medication dripped through the IV, her breathing deepened, evened out. The monitors kept their steady rhythm. I stood there holding my daughter's hand, staring at finger-shaped bruises and abraded palms, hearing her broken fragments echo in my mind. Locked out. Baby crying. How does a baby die in childbirth, but cry loud enough for the mother to hear it through a locked door? The pieces didn't fit. Brent's polished story about ice and falls and stillbirth, Celeste's injuries that screamed different trauma, her whispered words that painted a scene nowhere in his narrative, locked me out. Baby was crying. Nurse Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. Sir, I need to check her vitals. I released Celeste's hand and stepped back, watching Rodriguez work with efficient professionalism, adjusting the IV, noting readings on a tablet. The baby, I said quietly. Is there have any information about the infant? Rodriguez's expression went carefully neutral. You'd need to speak with Dr. Vreeland, the attending. He'll be making rounds at 6. Was there a death certificate filed? I don't have access to that information, sir. Dr. Vreeland can answer your questions. She left the room, taking her professional walls with her. I stood alone with my sedated daughter and 3 incompatible truths. Brent said the baby died at birth. Celeste remembered it crying. And somewhere in this hospital's records, or deliberately missing from them, was the answer that would destroy one version of tonight forever. The clock above Celeste's bed showed 2:14 a.m. January 1st. 4 hours since Brent's phone call. 4 hours since my daughter's life broke apart. Or 4 hours since someone tried to make me believe it had. They'd release Celeste in 48 hours. Maybe less if she recovered quickly. 48 hours before she woke up fully and asked the questions I was already asking. 8 hours to find out if my grandson was dead in a morgue or alive in a conspiracy I couldn't yet name. I kissed Celeste's forehead and walked out of room 318, with my machinist's hands steady and my father's heart fracturing into sharp, purposeful pieces. Somewhere in this city, my grandson was either waiting for a funeral or waiting to be found. I intended to know which before the sun came up twice more. The woman at the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's office put me on hold for the third time, and I knew before she came back that my grandson wasn't in their morgue, which meant he was either buried in a lie or still breathing somewhere. Brent needed him hidden. I'd left the hospital at 3 in the morning. Sat in Shirley's chair watching sunrise over Sun City West. Tried to sleep but kept seeing Celeste's abraded palms, hearing her whisper about locked doors and crying babies. At 10:30, I called the medical examiner's office to arrange my grandson's funeral. That was 45 minutes ago. Mr. Caldwell. Teresa Kincaid came back on the line with the methodical patience of 26 years processing death certificates. I've checked our intake logs for the past 48 hours. Pending files. And the county-wide database. We have no infant deaths from Banner Good Samaritan matching your daughter's information. I gripped the kitchen counter. Could it be filed under a different name? The father's, maybe? I searched every infant death in Maricopa County since January 1st. There are only 2, both from different hospitals with different circumstances. Neither matches what you're describing. The hospital told my son-in-law the baby had been taken to your facility. Then there's been a miscommunication, sir. I can follow up with Banner Good Samaritan's records department if you'd like. Yes, please. 2 infant deaths in the whole county this week. And my grandson wasn't one of them. I hung up and stood staring at the phone. Hospital births generated immediate documentation death certificates. Morgue transfers, intake logs, the kind of paperwork that happened automatically because hospitals ran on liability prevention. For a record to be completely absent from every database, someone would have to actively prevent it from being created. Or the baby would have to still be alive. I grabbed my truck keys and drove back to Phoenix. The hospital cafeteria smelled like overcooked vegetables and industrial coffee. I found Brent at a corner table picking at a sandwich. Still wearing yesterday's clothes, but somehow looking composed. The grief-stricken husband, taking a brief break from his vigil. He looked up, manufactured surprise crossing his face. Warren, how are you holding up? We need to talk. I sat across from him. I called the medical examiner this morning. Something flickered behind his eyes. Calculation. About arrangements? He asked carefully. About locating my grandson's body. I kept my voice level. They have no record of him. Not under Celeste's name, not under yours, not under any infant death this week. Brent set down his sandwich, reached for his coffee, buying himself 3 seconds. That's strange. The doctor told me they'd completed the transfer paperwork. He pulled out his phone, started scrolling. Hospital bureaucracy during an emergency, you know how it is. Probably got misfiled in the snowstorm chaos. I'll handle it with administration this afternoon. Teresa Kincaid searched every database. She's been doing this for 26 years. Then someone made a mistake. Brent's smile was patient. Warren, I know this is hard. I'll get it straightened out, I promise. He was good. The reasonable son-in-law dealing with a confused old man. Celeste said something last night. I watched his face. She was sedated, barely conscious, but she mentioned being locked out. Said the baby was crying. Brent's fingers tightened around the coffee cup. She was in shock. Warren. Trauma does strange things to memory. The doctors warned me she might have gaps. Confusion. That's normal after what she went through. Her injuries don't match a fall. I'm not a doctor. His voice cooled. But the ER physician documented blunt force trauma consistent with impact on ice. If you have medical expertise that contradicts their assessment, maybe you should speak with them directly. The threat was subtle but clear. 43 years at the plant taught me that the first person to blame chaos is usually the one who created it. I just want to understand what happened to my grandson. So do I. Brent leaned forward, dropping his voice. Warren, I know losing Shirley has been hard. 6 months isn't long. And now this, losing your first grandchild? The stress of it all. I'm worried about you. There it was. The last thing Celeste needs, Brent continued, is family adding stress with confusion and conspiracy theories when she's trying to heal. She needs support, stability, not someone questioning the doctors and making this harder. He stood, picked up his coffee. I need to get back upstairs. Celeste might wake up this afternoon. I want to be there. Of course. I'll call you when I hear from administration about the records mix-up. Don't worry. I'll handle everything. He walked away. The concerned son-in-law returning to his vigil. Why would a grieving father tell his father-in-law to stop asking questions about his own grandchild's death? But I'd seen the calculation behind his eyes when I mentioned the morgue. The same look engineers got when a critical measurement didn't match their projections, and they had to decide whether to report the discrepancy or bury it. Brent had just chosen to bury it. I sat alone watching staff rotate through lunch breaks. Somewhere above me, my daughter slept, believing her son was dead. Somewhere in this city, the truth existed in a space only Brent could access, and I had maybe 48 hours before he moved it beyond my reach entirely. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. Started typing what I knew for certain. No death certificate. No morgue record. Injuries inconsistent with fall. Locked door. Baby crying. 5 facts that didn't add up to stillbirth. 5 facts that added up to something worse. I needed witnesses. Evidence. Something concrete before Celeste woke up and Brent's version became the official family narrative. I left the cafeteria and drove toward Desert Vista, the neighborhood where my daughter and her husband had built what I'd thought was a normal life. Time to find out what normal had been hiding. Celeste's house looked normal from the street. Holiday wreath still on the door. 2 cars in the driveway, and that's what made my skin crawl. Because normal was exactly what Brent needed everyone to see while he dismantled his life from the inside. I parked across the street in Desert Vista's late afternoon quiet. Tract homes with desert landscaping. Retired snowbirds like me who'd fled Midwest winters for Arizona sunshine. The kind of neighborhood where people noticed things because they had time to notice. Marlene Foster was clearing residual snow from her driveway next door. 52, and retired from the Postal Service with the kind of observational habit that comes from decades sorting addresses. She looked up when I got out of my truck. Warren, I heard about Celeste. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I walked to the property line between driveways. I'm trying to piece together what happened. Were you home that night? Asleep by 10 usually. But I heard the ambulance around midnight. By the time I looked out, they were already loading her. Did you see Brent? Not that night. She hesitated. But I've been seeing him plenty the past month or so. Loading that car at all hours. My pulse quickened. What car? Silver Toyota. Not the Nissan he usually drives. Parks it in the garage, but I've seen him loading boxes. 2, 3 in the morning sometimes. I'm a light sleeper since retirement. What kind of boxes? Office boxes, file boxes. The kind you'd use for paperwork. I thought maybe they were organizing for the baby, clearing space for a nursery. She glanced at Celeste's house. But it seemed like a lot. And the timing was odd. Odd how he'd open the garage door, look up and down the street first like he was checking if anyone was watching, then load whatever he had and close it quick. Marlene's expression shifted from neighborly concern to something sharper. Made me wonder if everything was okay with the marriage. He'd been loading that car for a month while Celeste's belly grew, planning his exit while she planned a nursery. How many times did you see this 6, maybe 7 over the past month. Always late or early. Always that same checking the street thing. Thank you, Marlene. That helps more than you know. I crossed to Celeste's front door and pulled out the key she'd given me 3 years ago when they bought the house. In case of emergency, she'd said, you know how to fix things. The house smelled like the vanilla candles Celeste loved and something else underneath stale coffee. Unwashed dishes. The living room looked staged baby swing by the couch. Folded receiving blankets on the ottoman. Everything positioned like a catalog photo of expectant parenthood. But the office door stood open. That stopped me. Brent's home office had always been locked. His space for client files, he'd explained, confidentiality requirements. I'd accepted it the same way I'd accepted his polished smile. I stepped inside. The desk was chaos. Papers scattered, file folders open, a laptop closed but power light still blinking. The kind of mess that happens when someone grabs what they need and runs. I started with the papers on top. Collection letters. 3 different agencies, all with the same desperate tone of final notice before legal action. Desert Diamond Casino, $87,000 in arrears since October. Account transferred to collections December 1st. $87,000 in gambling debts, more than I'd earned in 2 years at the plant before retirement. I kept reading. Cryptocurrency investment firm, $43,000 in margin calls unpaid. Threats of lawsuit. Credit card company, $18,000 past due. Brent Harding wasn't just in debt. He was drowning. I pulled open the desk drawer. More paperwork, but a different kind. Printed forms, half-filled applications. Driver's license application for Nevada. Name, Derek Michael Lansing. Birth date, Brent's birth date. Height, weight, physical description, all Brent's. Bank account opening documents for First Nevada Credit Union. Derek Michael Lansing. P.O. Box address in Henderson. Rental agreement. 1-bedroom apartment in Laughlin, Nevada. Tenant Derek Lansing. Start date February 1st, 2025. 3 weeks from now. I sat in Brent's chair, staring at the documents spread across his desk, and understood. He'd been building a whole new person. Derek Lansing wasn't a fantasy. It was an escape hatch, complete with address, bank account, identification. A life waiting in Nevada for the man who needed to stop being Brent Harding. And Celeste's due date was February 2nd. 1 day after Derek Lansing's rental agreement started. What kind of man builds a new identity while his wife builds a crib? The baby wasn't coming into his life. The baby was the deadline for getting out. I pulled out my phone and started photographing. Every debt letter, every Derek Lansing document, every piece of evidence that proved Brent had spent months planning to vanish. The camera shutter clicked in the silent office. Preserving proof of premeditation. A manila folder at the bottom of the drawer caught my eye. Thicker than the others. Labeled in Brent's handwriting, DL, Final. Inside printed instructions for changing Social Security records. A guide to establishing new credit history. A list of states that don't cross-reference driver's licenses. Research notes on how to disappear, and a handwritten timeline on yellow legal paper. October finalized DL documentation. November secure Nevada address. December transfer liquid assets. January standby. February 1, activate. Brent had given himself a 4-month runway to build Derek Lansing, and the baby had come 3 weeks early. Landing in the middle of standby when everything was ready but nothing was supposed to move yet, I photographed it all. My hands steady despite the rage building in my chest. Then I locked the office door behind me, walked out of that staged normal house, and stood on the driveway breathing January air that still smelled faintly of snow. Brent hadn't just lied about the baby's death. He'd been planning to abandon his pregnant wife for months. And when the baby came early, he'd improvised something darker than simple desertion. The question burning through my gut if the baby had been his deadline to disappear. What had he done with the one obstacle that could tie Derek Lansing back to Brent Harding? My phone buzzed. Text from the hospital. Celeste awake and asking for you. I had evidence now. Debt, deceit, and a man who'd built an entire fake life while his real one prepared for fatherhood. Time to find out what my daughter remembered about the night her husband's careful timeline collapsed into crisis. When I walked back into Celeste's ICU room at 7 that evening, she was awake enough to recognize me and awake enough to remember what her husband had done to her in the snow. Dad. Her voice was rough from intubation, but her eyes were clear, too clear. The medication had worn off enough to let the truth back in. I pulled the chair close, took her hand. The abrasions on her palms stood out angry and red. "Where's my baby?" She asked it before I could speak. "Nobody will tell me where he is." I squeezed her hand. "Tell me what you remember first, about that night." "Brent said I was dead, didn't he?" "That's what he told you." "He said a lot of things. I need to hear your version." Celeste closed her eyes, and I watched her face work through whatever memories the sedation had been holding back. We were arguing about going to the hospital. I'd been having contractions for an hour, and I wanted to leave. But he kept saying it was too early. Then my water broke, and I told him we had to go, now. He got this look on his face, like panic, but colder. She opened her eyes, staring at the ceiling. He grabbed my arm. Hard. I thought he was helping me to the car, but then we were at the front door and he pushed me. Not helped, pushed. I was in my nightgown, snowing. I stumbled onto the porch and turned around. And he was closing the door. Not a fall. Not an accident. He shoved his pregnant wife into a snowstorm and locked the door. I tried to grab the handle, but I heard the deadbolt click. I was pounding on the door, screaming for him to let me back in. Her voice broke. The contractions were getting stronger. I could barely stand. I kept yelling that I needed to get to the hospital, that the baby was coming too fast, but he didn't open the door. Did he say anything? I could hear him moving inside, walking past like I wasn't there. I screamed that I was freezing, that I was going to die, and he just... She sobbed once. He just let me. I held her hand while she cried. And for the first time since Shirley died, I wanted to kill someone with my bare hands. When she could speak again, her voice was harder. I gave birth on the front step. Dad. Alone in the snow in the middle of the night. I didn't have anything to cut the cord with, so I just pulled him to my chest and tried to keep him warm. But I was so cold myself. Everything was spinning. I could feel the blood. So much blood. And I knew I was dying. But the baby, I said carefully. What about the baby? Something fierce crossed her face. He cried. After he was born, he cried so loud. Strong lungs. He was alive. Dad. He was breathing and crying. And I was trying to hold him close. But my hands weren't working right anymore. Everything was going dark. And the last thing I remember was my baby crying loud enough to wake the whole street. If the baby was crying loud enough to wake the neighborhood. Where was it now? Do you remember anyone coming, neighbors, paramedics? No. Just the crying, and the cold, and then nothing until I woke up here. She focused on me. Brent told you the baby died, didn't he? He said stillborn. That the hospital took the body to the morgue. But I heard him cry. I know. So where is he? Her grip tightened. Dad, where is my baby? I pulled out my phone and opened the photos from the house. I need to show you something. I walked her through it. The debt collection notices, the gambling losses, the cryptocurrency failures. Her face went white when I showed her the Derek Lansing documents. He was leaving. She said it flatly. He was going to abandon us. The rental agreement starts February 1st. Your due date was February 2nd. He was waiting for me to have the baby so he could disappear. But then I went into labor early. Messed up his timeline. So he locked me outside to what? Kill me, make it look like an accident? Her voice was rising. What was the plan? I don't know yet. But I called the medical examiner this morning. They have no record of any infant death from this hospital that night. No death certificate. No body. No paperwork. The machines monitoring Celeste's vitals started beeping faster. She sat up despite the IV lines. Then where is my baby? Her whisper cut through the room. If he was crying when I passed out, and there's no death certificate, Dad, where is he? That's what I'm going to find out. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, drawn by the monitors. Everything okay? Fine. Just talking. The nurse checked Celeste's vitals, adjusted the IV, and left with a concerned glance. Celeste grabbed my wrist. Who delivered him if I was on the front step? Who was there when he was born? Somebody saw. Somebody knows. The delivery nurse. She'd have to know if the baby was alive or dead. Brent couldn't fake that. Then we talk to her. We will. But if Brent's already gotten to her, if he's paid her off or threatened her, I don't care. Her eyes were steel. That's my son. Someone knows where he is, and I'm not stopping until I find him. I looked at my daughter, transformed by fury into something sharper than grief, and recognized Shirley's strength in her face. We have maybe 48 hours before Brent activates Derek Lansing and disappears, I said. We need to find that nurse. We need to find out what really happened after you passed out. And we need to do it before he realizes we're looking. Celeste nodded once. Final as a door closing. Then let's stop wasting time. I spread the evidence across my kitchen table. At sunrise, photos of Derek Lansing documents. Marlene's testimony about midnight packing. Celeste's memory of the locked door. And built an investigation checklist, the way I'd once tracked defects through a 250,000-part assembly line methodical. Redundant. And impossible to dismiss as old man paranoia. Coffee burned in the pot while I worked. I'd left Celeste's room at midnight, after she finally slept. Driven home through empty Phoenix streets, and spent the dark hours organizing what I knew into what I could prove. First column facts. I could document. Morgue records. Teresa Kincaid at the medical examiner's office had searched every database. 0 infant deaths matching Celeste's delivery. I needed that in writing. Not just verbal confirmation. I called at 6:30. Teresa had already followed up with Banner Good Samaritan's records department as promised. No record of any infant delivery or death for Celeste Harding on January 1st, she said. Just an adult admission for hypothermia and blood loss. No obstetric codes. No newborn charts. Deliberate deletion would take administrator-level access and clear intent that's not an accident. Mr. Caldwell, I need that in writing. For potential legal proceedings. I'll have it to you by courier tomorrow. Second column. Independent witnesses. Marlene Foster saw Brent loading that silver Toyota for a month. Celeste remembered giving birth on her front step. Remembered her baby crying. 3 independent sources saying the baby was alive. 0 official records saying the baby existed. Building a case against your son-in-law is like inspecting a failed rocket launch. Follow the data, not the narrative. Third column. What Brent controlled. Hospital records missing. Birth certificate never filed. Death certificate never filed. Medical examiner intake no body delivered. Every piece of documentation that should have been automatically generated by the hospital's systems, gone. The pattern was clear. This wasn't administrative chaos. This was deliberate evidence destruction, which meant someone with access to hospital records had helped Brent erase his son from existence. I added a 4th column. Witnesses who knew the truth. The delivery nurse. She'd have been there when the paramedics brought Celeste in. Would have handled the baby. Would know if it was alive or dead. She was the one person who couldn't be fooled by Brent's performance because she'd seen the medical reality. I checked my watch. 7:15. The hospital cafeteria would be open, either was, staff rotating through breakfast before day shift. Time to find her. Banner Good Samaritan's labor and delivery wing had the hushed efficiency of a place where life happened around the clock. I stopped at the nurse's station, where a young woman in scrubs looked up from her computer. I'm looking for the nurse who was on duty 2 nights ago during the snowstorm. There was an emergency delivery my daughter, Celeste Harding. The nurse's expression went carefully neutral. You'd need to speak with administration about staff assignments. I just need to thank whoever helped my daughter. It was a difficult situation. She hesitated, then glanced down the hall. Adrienne Hayes was on that night. She's on break in the staff lounge, but I can't guarantee. Thank you. I found the staff lounge at the end of the corridor. A windowless room with vending machines and tired furniture. A woman in blue scrubs sat alone with a protein bar and a coffee. Her ID badge reading A. Hayes, RN. Adrienne Hayes, 44 years old with 2 decades in labor and delivery at Banner Good Samaritan. Had the kind of competent calm that came from seeing 1,000 births, which made her visible panic when I approached all the more telling. Ms. Hayes. I kept my voice gentle. I'm Warren Caldwell. You were on duty when my daughter Celeste Harding delivered 2 nights ago. I just need to ask. Her face went white. The protein bar fell from her hand. I can't remember every delivery. Her voice was too high, too fast. We had multiple emergencies that night during the storm. A labor nurse doesn't forget a birth from 2 days ago, she remembers. But someone made her too scared to say so. I understand it was chaotic. But the baby that was born to Celeste, was it alive when you... She stood abruptly, chair scraping linoleum. I can't talk about this. Ms. Hayes, please. I'm just trying to understand what happened to my grandson. I can't. She grabbed her coffee, backed toward the door. Please don't ask me again. She was looking over my shoulder, scanning the hallway like she expected someone to be watching. Not confused about details, not protected by HIPAA regulations. Scared. Someone threatened you. I said it quietly. About what you saw that night. Adrienne's eyes met mine for just a second, and I saw everything I needed to know. Terror, guilt, the desperate plea of someone caught between conscience and self-preservation. Then she was gone, hurrying through the staff-only doors. Her footsteps echoing down the corridor too fast for a woman just ending her break. I stood alone in the break room, staring at the protein bar she'd dropped on the table, and understood. What had Brent threatened her with that made a healthcare professional abandon her Hippocratic duty to a newborn? My phone buzzed. Text from Celeste. Any luck with the nurse? I typed back. Found her. She's terrified, working on it. 3 dots appeared. Then, Dad, be careful. If he threatened her, he'll know you're looking. She was right. Adrienne Hayes wouldn't stay silent about my questions. She'd call someone, report that the family was asking about the baby, and that someone would tell Brent. I had maybe 24 hours before my son-in-law knew I was hunting him, which meant I needed to move faster, push harder, and get Adrienne to talk before Brent realized the Derek Lansing escape plan was compromised. Because the moment he knew, that baby would disappear as completely as every record of his birth. I drove straight to Desert Vista with 23 hours on my clock before Adrienne Hayes told someone I was asking questions. If Brent was going to know I was hunting him anyway. I wanted to watch his face when I confronted him with Derek Lansing's Nevada driver's license. I found him in Celeste's kitchen, pretending to make coffee. And when I asked him point blank about Derek Lansing, his concerned husband mask cracked clean down the middle. Where did you hear that name? He set down the coffee pot too carefully. Your home office. The Derek Lansing documents, Nevada driver's license, bank account opened October 12th, rental agreement starting February 1st. I showed him the photos. You want to explain why you're building a new identity while your wife was 8 months pregnant? Brent stared at the screen, calculating. Deny, or deflect. His jaw tightened. "You broke into my office." I used Celeste's key. The door was unlocked. "Those are private financial documents. They're evidence of fraud. And abandonment. And whatever you did with that baby." I kept my voice level. 87,000 in gambling debts. You weren't planning a fresh start. You were running from creditors. The mask didn't slip. It shattered. And the man underneath looked at me like I was an obstacle he'd learned to remove. "You have no idea what you're doing, old man." His voice went cold. "Stay out of this before you make things worse for everyone, especially Celeste." "Is that a threat?" Brent leaned against the counter. The grieving husband was gone completely. "It's advice. From someone who knows how fragile your daughter's mental state is right now. Trauma does strange things to memory. Grief makes people confused, paranoid. Wouldn't want her recovery complicated by family drama. By a father who can't accept tragedy and starts seeing conspiracies everywhere. He was going to gaslight her. Use her trauma against her. Make her doubt her own memories. She remembers everything. You pushing her outside? Locking the door? The baby crying? She was in shock, hypothermic, losing blood. The doctor said her memories would be unreliable. Brent's smile didn't reach his eyes. "But please, keep upsetting her with your theories. I'm sure it's great for her mental health." I noticed the suitcase then, partially hidden behind the living room chair. Black roller bag, overhead compartment size. "Going somewhere?" "Back to work eventually. Haven't been home in 2 days. His eyes flicked to the suitcase. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to the hospital." Unlike some people, I'm actually supporting Celeste instead of harassing her family. He walked past me, cologne expensive and deliberate. "I know about the medical examiner," I said to his back. "No infant death record exists. No body, no certificate, no paperwork." Brent stopped at the door but didn't turn. "Then maybe you should ask yourself what that means. Warren. Maybe the hospital made a mistake. Maybe records got misfiled. Or maybe..." He looked over his shoulder. "Maybe there's a reason you can't find what you're looking for." He left, the door closing with a soft click that sounded like a threat. I stood in Celeste's kitchen and pulled out my phone. Phil Hartman answered on the second ring. "Warren, everything okay?" "I need a favor. Off the books." Phil Hartman, 56 and branch manager at Desert Valley Credit Union after 30 years climbing from teller. Had worked the same aerospace plant floor as me back in the 90s before switching to finance. We'd stayed in touch, Christmas cards, occasional lunch, shared history that meant something. He met me in his office at 4, closed the door, and listened while I explained. "You're asking me to access customer accounts without authorization. I'm asking you to help me find my grandson." Phil had been at my retirement party. He had known Shirley for 30 years. He was risking his job to help me save my grandson. He turned to his computer. "What's the name on the joint account?" "Celeste and Brent Harding." His fingers moved, then stopped. His expression changed. "Warren." He turned the monitor. "The joint account. He drained it. 24,000 over 6 weeks. Last transfer was November 18th. I leaned closer, reading the transaction history. Systematic, methodical, never enough at once to trigger fraud alerts. "Can you see where it went?" "External transfers, different banks. But I can search for accounts opened around those dates." He typed again, frowned. "Warren, someone opened a new account using Derek Lansing. October 12th. October 12th. The day Celeste announced she was having a boy. Brent started building Derek Lansing's bank account. Current balance, $31,000. I sat back. 24,000 from the joint account, plus another 7 from somewhere else, probably cash advances from those credit cards in collection. "Phil, I need this in writing, screenshots, email them to me." He hesitated, then nodded. Give me your email. I watched him capture the screens, attach them, hit send. My phone buzzed. Thank you. Warren, what are you going to do with this? Prove my son-in-law is a fraud. And find out what he did with my grandson. I sat in Phil's office staring at the Derek Lansing account balance on my phone. $31,000. Enough to start fresh in Nevada, and understood. Brent's plan had always required the baby to disappear. A newborn tied Derek Lansing to Brent Harding through birth certificates, DNA, child support. But if the baby died at birth, if there were no official records, no body to produce later, then Brent could walk away clean while Celeste grieved a tragedy instead of hunting a fugitive. The question that made my blood run cold: had Brent planned the baby's death from the beginning? Or had he improvised something worse when it was born alive and crying loud enough to wake the neighborhoods? I drove home from the bank with one question burning through my mind. When had Brent decided to kill the baby, if that's what he'd done? But when I spread Derek Lansing's documents across my desk under the amber lamp and pulled out Phil Hartman's handwritten note with the account opening date, I saw the answer align with perfect, horrifying clarity. October 12th, 2024. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through my calendar to that date. Found the family text thread. Celeste's message at 2:47 p.m. Ultrasound today. It's a boy. Due. February 2nd. 12 heart emojis from Shirley, who'd been gone 4 months by then, but whose joy I could still feel through the screen. My reply. A grandson. Your mother would be over the moon. And below that, Brent's response at 3:15 p.m. We're so blessed. 28 minutes later, according to Phil's records, the Derek Lansing account opened. First transfer from the joint account, $3,000. Not a coincidence. A trigger. How long had my son-in-law sat across from us at Sunday dinners, nodding through Celeste's baby registry plans, while October 12th's bank transfer confirmations burned in his pocket? I laid out the timeline on paper. Derek Lansing birth certificate filed September 2024. Social Security application September 19th. Then nothing until October 12th, the day Celeste announced it was a boy. That's when the money started moving. That's when the escape plan shifted from theoretical to operational. Brent hadn't been running from the baby. He'd been running from a son specifically. A male heir who'd have legal claims, inheritance rights, DNA evidence that could follow him anywhere. A daughter might have been different, more complicated, for custody, fraud, less useful for whatever scheme he'd researched. But a son activated everything. I checked my watch. 8:20. Visiting hours ended at 9. I grabbed the manila folder with all the evidence and drove to Banner Good Samaritan for the second time that day. Celeste was awake when I walked into room 318, staring at the empty bassinet cart someone had left in the corner. She looked up when I entered, and I saw the medication haze had lifted enough to let the grief back in completely. They keep wheeling it past. Her voice was raw. Every new baby on the floor. I hear them crying and I keep thinking, I need to show you something. I pulled the chair close to her bed. It's going to be hard, but you need to see it. I laid out the evidence piece by piece. Marlene's testimony about the midnight packing, the Derek Lansing documents, Phil's bank records showing the systematic drain, Adrian's terrified silence. Celeste's hands shook as she processed it. Initially defensive. Brent he couldn't. Look at the date. I pointed to the bank statement. October 12th. Same day you texted us about the ultrasound. She stared at the numbers, and I watched recognition spread across her face like a stain. He knew it was a boy, and within hours he moved the money. No. That day, she stopped. Her expression changed. That's the day everything changed. What do you mean? He came home late. Said he'd been celebrating the news with coworkers. I smelled perfume on his shirt. I thought... Her voice broke. I thought he was having an affair. 3 words on her lips. Where's my son? Not, how could he? Not, why didn't I see? Just the only question that mattered. That's what we're going to find out, I said. Celeste wiped her eyes. After that day, he started working late. Overnight emergencies, obsessive about our budget, saying we needed to save for the baby. I thought he was being responsible. He was staging his escape. The gym bag. She sat up straighter despite the IV lines. October, maybe early November. I found it in the garage, hiking boots inside, men's clothes, some cash. Wrong size for Brent, the boots were bigger. I asked about it and he said work, donation drive. Survival gear, I said. For Derek Lansing's new life. Celeste's grief was transforming into something harder. He kept asking if I'd told my family the baby's name, every week. Have you announced it yet? Posted it anywhere? I said no. We were waiting. And he looked relieved. Because no birth announcement meant no public paper trail he'd have to explain. He researched mountain cabins in November, said it was for a baby moon. Showed me pictures of places near Flagstaff, Sedona. I thought it was romantic. She laughed, bitter. He was scouting escape routes. I watched my daughter's hands stop shaking. Watched her spine straighten against the hospital pillows. Grief was still there, but now it had direction, velocity, teeth. My baby's out there, she said. With a stranger who stole my husband's face. We're getting him back. Tomorrow we take this to Detective Prescott. Force an official investigation. Tonight. She reached for her phone on the bedside table. We take it tonight. I'm not waiting. The phone screen lit up with a notification. Her face went white. Dad. She turned the screen toward me. Bank alert. Fraudulent activity warning on Brent Harding's credit card. Location. Flagstaff, Arizona. 387 miles north. Timestamp, 5:47 p.m. 3 hours ago. Purchase Flagstaff Walmart. $34.97. Item description. Enfamil newborn formula, 6-pack. I stared at the screen. My machinist's brain calculating distances, timelines, possibilities. Brent was in Flagstaff, with a baby who needed formula, which meant my grandson was alive. He's running out of money, Celeste whispered. Using the credit card, making mistakes. Or he doesn't care anymore if we can track him. I screenshot the alert, forwarded it to myself. Either way, we know where he was 3 hours ago. That's 6 hours' drive from here. I looked at my daughter, seeing the calculation in her eyes. The same calculation running through my mind. Detective Prescott would want us to wait. Bring the evidence in the morning. Let the police handle it. Follow protocol. But protocol moved slow, and Brent was moving fast. And somewhere in Flagstaff, my 3-day-old grandson was being fed formula by a man desperate enough to fake a death and smart enough to almost pull it off. Get me discharged, Celeste said. Against medical advice, I don't care. We're going to Flagstaff. Celeste, that's my baby. Dad. And he's 6 hours away. Every minute we sit here is another minute Brent has to run. I convinced Celeste to wait until morning. To do it the right way, evidence first. Then pursuit if the police wouldn't act. We spent the night compiling every document, every photo, every witness statement into a manila folder that should have been impossible to ignore. By 9 a.m. on day 3, we were sitting across from Detective Raymond Prescott at Phoenix PD Central City Precinct, and he slid the folder back across the desk without opening it, his expression already forming the word I'd learned to hate. Jurisdiction. Detective Raymond Prescott, 51 with 2 decades in major crimes. Looked like a man who'd heard every conspiracy theory twice and believed none of them. His office smelled like old coffee and skepticism. Mr. Caldwell, I understand your concern, but without a live birth certificate or medical examiner dispute, Legally, there's no victim to kidnap. He bought baby formula in Flagstaff 6 hours ago. I pulled out Celeste's phone, showing the bank alert. Stillborn infants don't need Enfamil. Prescott glanced at the screen. Credit card fraud. Maybe. But that's a federal case if he crosses state lines. You need FBI, not Phoenix PD. The hospital records, Celeste started. Prescott opened a file on his computer. Turned the monitor toward us. Banner Good Samaritan filed a stillbirth certificate electronically at 1:18 a.m. January 1st. Signed by the attending physician. Processed through state vital records. That's an official document. I felt something cold settle in my chest. What time did the baby actually arrive? According to the certificate, 12:47 a.m. Prescott's voice was careful. 31 minutes earlier. How many times had I trusted a system built on paperwork to catch a man who'd proven he could forge it out? Someone with administrator access falsified that record, I said. While my daughter was sedated. While the baby was still alive. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? The delivery nurse, who I called this morning, Adrian Hayes, confirmed she was on duty that night, but couldn't recall specific details about your daughter's delivery due to the multiple emergency admissions during the snowstorm. Prescott closed the file. I'm sorry. Without medical testimony contradicting the official record, I can't open a criminal investigation. Celeste's hands gripped the armrests. So what do we do now? Family court for custody dispute. Civil attorney for the financial fraud. Maybe a private investigator to locate your husband. Prescott's voice softened slightly. But Phoenix PD can't pursue this as a kidnapping when all documentation shows the infant was stillborn and the financial transactions were between legal spouses. He's in Flagstaff with my son. Celeste whispered. Then file a missing persons report on your husband. He's in Flagstaff with my son. Celeste whispered. Then file a missing persons report on your husband. But Mrs. Harding, until we have evidence contradicting that death certificate, there's no case here. We walked out of Phoenix PD at 10 a.m. with the same manila folder we'd brought in. Celeste went back to the hospital for her final discharge paperwork. I drove home and sat in my truck in the driveway, staring at nothing. 43 years in aerospace had taught me that systems fail when protocols override evidence. I just watched it happen in real time. My phone rang at 7 that evening. Unknown number. Mr. Caldwell. The voice was shaking. It's Adrian Hayes. I need to talk to you, alone. Hospital parking lot C in 20 minutes. She hung up before I could respond. I found her in the employee parking lot at shift change, standing beside a beat-up Honda, checking over her shoulder every few seconds. The yellow sodium lights made her look older than 44. Or maybe that was just fear. Thank you for coming. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I can't stay long. If someone sees me, tell me about the baby. 3 words from the nurse I've been waiting to hear. He was alive. She said it fast, like ripping off a bandage. Born at 12:47 a.m. Cried immediately. Strong lungs. APGAR score 8 at 1 minute, 9 at 5 minutes. Healthy male. 7 pounds 2 ounces. I did the assessment myself. I gripped the side of her car to steady myself. Then why did you lie to the detective? Because the day after the birth. Brent cornered me in the supply room, knew my sister's address in Flagstaff, knew about my DUI from 2019. Said if I talked, I'd lose my license, my job, and he'd file a civil suit that would destroy my family. Her voice broke. I have 3 kids, Mr. Caldwell. I couldn't. Why now? You've had 3 weeks. Adrian pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Because this morning my sister texted me this. She showed me the screen. Photo from Walgreens security camera. Timestamp 8:14 a.m. today. Man at pharmacy counter. Face clear in the overhead lights. Brent. Trying to refill an anxiety prescription under his real name. She's a pharmacist in Flagstaff. Recognized him from family photos I'd shown her. She denied the prescription, said insurance wouldn't cover it. He left looking panicked. In the yellow wash of the parking lot lights, I watched a stranger choose courage over fear and felt the case crack open. "He's not hiding anymore," Adrian said. "He's desperate, which means your grandson is in danger. And I can't keep quiet knowing that. You'll testify, officially. If you can protect my family. If you can guarantee Brent can't come after us." "I can't guarantee anything. But I can promise we'll stop him." She nodded once. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and went pale. "What is it?" Adrian showed me the new text. Same sister, different timestamp, 6:53 p.m. 22 minutes ago while I'd been driving here. Same Walgreens, different security photo. Brent at the checkout counter. Basket visible, children's Tylenol, digital thermometer, pediatric electrolyte solution. "The baby's sick," Adrian whispered. I stared at the photo. Calculating. Flagstaff was 6 hours north. Brent had been there at least 12 hours based on the morning pharmacy visit. Buying fever medication and thermometers meant the baby was in medical distress. And he was using his real credit card again, leaving a trail. Because whatever was happening with my grandson was more urgent than staying hidden. "I need to go," I said. "Mr. Caldwell, write down everything. Time of birth, APGAR scores, what you saw Brent do with the baby. Text it to me tonight. I'm driving to Flagstaff now." The police. "We'll move too slow. That baby's been with Brent for 3 days. He's sick, scared, and 6 hours away. I'm not waiting for jurisdiction anymore." I wouldn't piece together what happened in that house until weeks later. From Brent's own confession, Jennifer Simmons's phone records, and the FBI's forensic timeline, but laid end to end. The hour before he ran looked like this. The burner phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. with a message Brent Harding had paid $2,000 to never receive. "Your father-in-law was at Phoenix PD this morning with a folder." Brent stared at the screen in the dark bedroom, his carefully constructed timeline collapsing into hours. The message came from Jennifer Simmons, a billing coordinator at Banner Good Samaritan, who he'd paid to flag any requests related to Celeste's patient file or his name. Insurance against exactly this scenario. He typed back. What did he bring? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Photos, bank papers, witness statements. They didn't arrest him. Detective said no crime proven yet. But he's building a case. Brent deleted the message thread and stood, moving to the window. The cul-de-sac was empty at midnight. Houses dark, neighborhoods sleeping. He'd planned to leave Saturday, 3 more days to let things settle. To make the departure look less like fleeing and more like a planned move. Warren had cut his timeline to hours. He checked the baby monitor on the nightstand. The infant slept in the nursery down the hall. Fever down to 99.8 after the last Tylenol dose 2 hours ago. 3 days old and already complicating everything. If Celeste had just delivered on schedule. If the baby had come in February as expected. Definition would already be settled in Nevada with a month's head start before anyone noticed the pattern. But the baby came early, and Warren started asking questions. And now everything had to move. How many times had he rehearsed this exact scenario? The early departure, the middle of the night load, the calm exit while Phoenix slept in. We leave tonight. Buddy, Brent whispered toward the monitor. No choice now. He pulled out his encrypted phone, different from the burner, different from his personal cell, and dialed the Sedona number. The man who answered sounded annoyed. It's midnight. I need the cabin tonight, not Saturday. That wasn't the arrangement. I know. I'll pay double the deposit, but I need access now. Silence. Brent heard movement, a door closing, background noise fading. What happened? Timeline accelerated. Family situation. I need to be there by morning. The documents aren't ready until Friday. Then I'll wait at the cabin. But I need to be off-grid by sunrise. More silence. Brent waited, calculating. The cabin owner took cash, didn't ask questions, and provided services that existed in the gray market between legal and prosecution. Fake documents, untraceable phones, connections to people who moved other people across borders. 3 a.m., the man finally said. Key under the mat. You bring the second half of the payment in cash. Agreed. And Brent? Don't use your real name on anything after this call. You're Derek Lansing now. Practice it. The line went dead. Brent moved efficiently. He'd been packed for weeks. Go bags in the hall closet. Derek Lansing documents in a fireproof folder, cash distributed in 3 separate hiding spots. The silver Toyota sat in the garage loaded with boxes of clothes. Supplies. Everything he'd been staging since November. $31,000. 4 months of planning, 3 felonies committed, and one old man with a camera phone was about to destroy everything. Unless he moved faster. He carried the go bags to the garage first, placed them in the truck bed. Then the Derek Lansing folder. Then the cash, $27,000 in bundled hundreds. What remained after the Nevada rental deposit and the document fees. The baby supplies came last. Formula, bottles, diapers. The portable bassinet he'd bought with cash 2 weeks ago. The infant car seat, rear-facing, already installed in the back seat. He'd learned how to install it from a YouTube video. This is original computer, so the search wouldn't show up in his browser history. Had practiced the straps on a stuffed animal, timing himself until he could secure it in under 30 seconds. Brent set the house lights on timer, living room, bedroom, kitchen, cycling on and off to maintain the illusion of occupancy. Thermostat set to normal. Mail on hold starting tomorrow with a forwarding address that didn't exist. Everything designed to buy him 3 days before anyone looked twice. He walked back to the nursery and stood over the bassinet. The baby slept with tiny fists curled near his face, cheeks flushed from the lingering fever. 3 days old. 7 pounds, 2 ounces at birth, according to the chart Adrian Hayes had filled out before Brent convinced her to forget it existed. Nathan Lansing. According to the Canadian birth certificate that would be ready Friday. Derek Lansing's son. Born in Calgary, Alberta, 6 months ago. Paperwork that would withstand border inspection if Derek had a job offer letter and a lease agreement and a story about returning home after his wife's tragic death in Arizona. He looked at the sleeping infant and felt nothing but the mathematics of escape. Your grandfather doesn't know when to let things go, Brent said quietly. We're going to the mountains where he can't find us. He checked the baby's temperature one last time. Still 99.8. Gave another dose of infant Tylenol, timing it so the next dose wouldn't be due until they reached Sedona. Wrapped him in 2 blankets against the January cold. The baby stirred but didn't wake when Brent lifted him. Carried him to the garage, strapped him into the car seat with practiced efficiency. 23 seconds. Brent pulled out the burner phone one last time and texted Jennifer Simmons. Delete everything. Our arrangement never happened. Then he removed the SIM card, snapped it in half, and dropped both pieces in the household trash he'd take to a dumpster 3 cities away. The garage door opener made its familiar mechanical sound, rising to reveal the empty cul-de-sac beyond. No lights in the neighbors' windows, no cars on the street. Perfect silence except for the baby's soft breathing and the truck's idling engine. Brent backed out at 12:51 a.m. Headlights off until he cleared the cul-de-sac, baby monitor silent in the cup holder. He didn't see the silver sedan parked 3 houses down, where Marlene Foster sat with her phone camera already recording. Didn't know she'd been watching the garage since midnight, alerted by the unusual activity. Suspicious after Warren's questions that afternoon. She captured clear footage of the truck backing out, the timestamp, the infant car seat visible through the rear window. And before Brent reached the intersection at the end of the street, she'd already sent the video to Warren with a text that read, "He's running, baby in car," heading north toward I-17. The video notification hit my phone at 1:03 a.m., dragging me out of shallow sleep. Grainy footage of Brent's truck backing out of the garage, headlights off, and strapped in the rear window, exactly where it should be. A rear-facing infant car seat. Marlene's text below the video. He's running, baby in car, heading north toward I-17. I was dressed and in my truck within 3 minutes. But by then, Brent had at least a 90-minute head start. I called Celeste at the hospital. He took him, I said. Marlene caught it on video. He's running north. I'm checking myself out. Pick me up in 20 minutes. Celeste. You just... 20 minutes. Dad, that's my son. But first I needed the doorbell camera footage Marlene had mentioned. At 6:15 a.m., the sun just starting to break over Sun City West, I knocked on her door. She answered still in her bathrobe, looking like she hadn't slept either. I've been going through my security footage since I sent you that video. You need to see this. Her doorbell camera faced the street with a clear view of Celeste's driveway 3 houses down. She pulled up the app on her tablet, scrolling back through time-stamped clips. I knew something was off, Marlene said. Who loads a car at midnight unless they're sneaking? She showed me the pattern. December 17th, 10:47 p.m. Brent loading boxes into a silver Toyota Camry parked in the driveway. Not the gray Nissan Altima he usually drove. License plate clearly visible in the camera's night vision. Arizona 8, TG-M493. December 23rd. 11:15 p.m. More boxes. December 30th. 10:52 p.m. Duffel bags. What looked like camping gear. January 1st. 12:51 a.m. The final load. Infant car seat. 6 weeks, I said, doing the math. He's been staging this since mid-December, right after. How many nights had I driven past that house? Seeing the warm glow of the porch light, assuming everything behind it was normal. That license plate isn't registered to him, Marlene said. I checked the HOA parking permits after you asked me about him last week. Brent drives a gray Nissan Altima. This Toyota's been showing up at odd hours for over a month. Can you send me all these clips? Already compiled them. Check your email. I downloaded the footage compilation while standing in her living room, watching being 6 weeks of systematic preparation compressed into 3 minutes of time-stamped evidence. Thank you, Marlene. This might be what finally convinces the police. She walked me to the door. Bring that baby home safe, Warren. I picked up Celeste from Banner Good Samaritan at 7:30. She'd signed herself out against medical advice. Pale and unsteady, but determined. We drove straight to Phoenix PD. Detective Prescott was at his desk by 8:45, coffee in hand, looking like a man who'd worked too many overnight shifts. His expression shifted when he saw the phone I held out. New evidence. From 30 minutes before I walked into your office yesterday morning. I showed him Marlene's midnight video. Then the doorbell footage compilation. 6 weeks of a man loading a car that wasn't his, under a name that wasn't his, planning an escape that required an infant to disappear. Prescott watched it twice, then reached for his keyboard. What's the plate number? Arizona 8 TG-M493. His fingers moved across the keyboard. The DMV database loaded. He went very still. Toyota Camry, registered to Derek Michael Lansing. P.O. Box address in Tempe. He turned his monitor toward us. The registration showed a P.O. box that probably didn't exist beyond a mail forwarding service. But the driver's license photo attached to the record made my breath catch. Not Brent's face. Something close, but wrong. Digitally altered. Aged. The kind of composite photo you'd use if you were planning to change your appearance to match a fake identity. Your son-in-law's been building this identity for months, Prescott said quietly. December 17th. While Celeste was 8 months pregnant and planning a nursery, Brent was loading stolen supplies into a stolen identities car parked 3 blocks away. The baby is in that car, Celeste said, her voice tight. Sick baby. Based on the Tylenol purchase yesterday. How fast can you find him? Prescott was already typing. Issuing a bolo now. Be on the lookout. Statewide. Every highway patrol. Every municipal department. Every sheriff's office in Arizona gets this plate number. Vehicle description and suspect information. How long? Goes out in 20 minutes. If he's still in Arizona. Highway patrol will spot that plate. Prescott looked up. But Mr. Caldwell. Mrs. Harding if he crossed into Nevada or New Mexico overnight. We're looking at interstate flight. That's FBI jurisdiction. Whole different timeline. He was in Flagstaff buying formula yesterday afternoon, I said. That's north, not west. He's not running to Nevada. He's going somewhere else. Sedona, Celeste whispered. The cabin research. He showed me pictures of places near Sedona. Prescott added the information to the bolo. I watched him type. Each keystroke transforming my grandson from missing person to active investigation, and felt the machinery of law finally turn in our direction. His desk phone rang as he hit send. Prescott answered. He listened, his face hardening. He motioned for us to stay. The call lasted 30 seconds. That was Arizona Highway Patrol, he said, hanging up. They spotted the Toyota Camry 40 minutes ago at a gas station outside Sedona, about 115 miles north of here. My heart jumped. Did they stop him? Attendant reported a male customer matching Brent's description. Late 30s, acting nervous, asking directions to Oak Creek Canyon. Paid cash. Drove off before the trooper who responded to the call arrived. The baby! Celeste's voice broke on the word. No infant visible through the vehicle windows, but Prescott's expression softened slightly. The attendant reported hearing crying from inside the vehicle. Infant crying. Celeste grabbed my hand. Alive, still alive. Oak Creek Canyon's remote territory, Prescott said. Lots of rental cabins, dirt roads, places to disappear if you know where you're going. I'm coordinating with Yavapai County Sheriff for a tactical response. How long? I asked. 2 hours to assemble the team and get them to Sedona. Maybe 3. 3 hours. While Brent disappeared into canyon country with a sick infant and a plan that had been 4 months in the making. I looked at Celeste. Saw the same calculation in her eyes. We're going to Sedona, I said. Now. I dialed Adrian Hayes from the precinct parking lot at 9:02 a.m. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Celeste sat beside me in the passenger seat, pale but determined. Mr. Caldwell. Adrian answered on the first ring. Her voice was raw, like she'd been crying all night. Detective Prescott needs your official testimony, I said. Can you come to the station now? A long pause. I'm already on my way. I couldn't sleep after what I told you. She arrived 20 minutes later, still wearing her nursing scrubs. Detective Prescott led us into an interview room with a camera mounted in the corner. The red recording light blinked like a heartbeat. State your name and occupation for the record, Prescott said. Adrian Marie Hayes, labor and delivery nurse at Banner Good Samaritan Medical Center. Her hands twisted in her lap. I've worked there 11 years. Tell us what you witnessed on January 1st. Adrian took a shaky breath. I received Celeste Harding and the baby when the ambulance rolled in, a little after 2 in the morning. The baby was already alive when they brought them in, crying. Strong lungs. I did his newborn assessment myself while the team worked on Celeste. APGAR scores were 8 at 1 minute, 9 at 5 minutes. Weight 7 pounds 2 ounces. Celeste grabbed my hand so hard, I felt her nails dig into my palm. The infant was alive. Prescott confirmed. Completely alive. Perfect, Adrian said. I wrapped him and stepped out to update the attending. Standard procedure. Brent said he'd stay with him. What happened next? I was only gone a few minutes, updating the chart, checking on Celeste's blood work. Adrian's voice dropped. When I came back, The baby was gone. Brent said he'd taken the infant to the nursery himself because I was busy. Was that the moment everything changed? One lie, a few unwatched minutes, and my grandson vanished into a conspiracy that would tear apart 2 states. "Did you verify that?" Prescott asked. I called the nursery. They had no record of admission. When I confronted Brent, he became hostile, told me I was confused, that the baby had been stillborn. Adrian wiped her eyes. I knew what I'd seen. But then Dr. Vreeland pulled me into his office. It landed like a punch to my chest. Dr. Marcus Vreeland, the hospital administrator. Adrian nodded. He told me there had been a tragic stillbirth, said the records were already filed. When I insisted I'd seen a live baby, he suggested I was experiencing compassion fatigue. Offered me 2 weeks paid leave to recover from my confusion. He threatened you, Prescott said flatly. He said discrepancies in newborn assessments could cost my nursing license. That grieving families sometimes need staff to support their version of events. Adrian's voice cracked. I should have reported it immediately. I was a coward. Celeste leaned forward. What time did Dr. Vreeland file the stillbirth certificate? I checked the system logs this morning before I came here. Adrian pulled out her phone and showed us a screenshot. Dr. Vreeland entered the record system at 1:15 a.m., 38 minutes after the live birth. He personally filed the fetal death certificate. Prescott's jaw tightened. That's fraud. Federal fraud if it crosses state lines. He left the room and returned 10 minutes later with 2 people I didn't recognize, a man and woman in dark suits with FBI credentials clipped to their belts. Special Agents Rourke and Chen. Prescott introduced them. This just became a federal case. Agent Rourke sat across from Adrian. The identity Derek Lansing flagged in our database. It's connected to a human trafficking network operating between Arizona and Nevada. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. Trafficking, Celeste whispered. Agent Chen opened a tablet. Derek Lansing doesn't exist. The Social Security number belongs to a deceased infant from 1987. But the bank account in that name received wire transfers totaling $31,000 from Brent Harding over the past 8 months. Everything I'd uncovered, the gambling debts, the drained accounts, the fake identity. It was worse than I'd imagined. How do you prepare to hear your son-in-law might have sold your grandson? We believe Brent was paying for a new identity package. Rourke continued. Birth certificate, Social Security card, medical records. The kind of documentation you need to disappear with a child and claim it's yours. Prescott's radio crackled. Detective, we've got an update on the Toyota. He stepped out. I could see him through the window, his expression darkening as he listened. When he came back, his face was grim. Highway Patrol spotted the Toyota at 11:20 a.m. on Route 89A near Oak Creek Canyon, Prescott said. Officer approached the vehicle. Driver fled on foot into the canyon forest, carrying a bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. It slammed into me. Celeste screamed. The car seat was still in the back. Prescott added quietly. Empty, but warm to the touch. I was out of my chair before anyone could stop me. Where exactly? Mr. Caldwell. Tactical teams are en route. Where? Prescott held my gaze. Mile marker 374. But you need to let us handle this. I was already running toward the parking lot. Celeste was right behind me. Mile marker 374 was 40 minutes away if I pushed the speed limit. 35 if I ignored it completely. My grandson was alive. He was out there in the wilderness with a desperate man who'd already proven he'd fake a death certificate and drain bank accounts. I wasn't waiting for tactical teams. I was getting my grandson back. We were 15 minutes from Oak Creek Canyon when my phone buzzed at 2:47 p.m. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me glance at the screen. The message made my hands go cold. Stop looking or you'll never find him. I slammed the brakes and pulled onto the shoulder. Celeste grabbed the dashboard. "What is it?" I showed her the screen. She went pale. "That's Brent's area code." I dialed Detective Prescott immediately. "I just received a threat from Brent. He knows we're coming." "Forward it to me," Prescott said. I heard typing in the background. "What number?" I read it off. More typing. Then a long pause. "Mr. Caldwell, turn around. Come back to the station now." "Why, what did you find?" That text pinged off a cell tower near Tonopah, Arizona. Timestamp 2:43 p.m. The name meant nothing to me. "Where's Tonopah?" 52 miles west of Phoenix on Interstate 10. Prescott's voice was tight. "Not north. The Oak Creek Canyon runner wasn't Brent." The highway tilted beneath me. Celeste's hand found mine. "He knows we're coming," I said quietly. "Someone tipped him off." "Maybe. Or he's been watching police scanners." Prescott paused. "The canyon driver, we just got facial recognition back from body cam footage. It's Dr. Marcus Vreeland." It hit like a physical blow. The hospital administrator who'd filed the fraudulent death certificate had been running interference in the canyon while Brent escaped west. "Vreeland was the decoy," I said. The pattern snapped into focus with brutal clarity. While I'd been imagining my grandson lost in Oak Creek Canyon wilderness, Brent had been driving west on open highway with a 3-hour head start. Coordinated misdirection. Prescott confirmed. "Vreeland split our resources. Tactical teams are still combing that forest. We fell for it." I tasted bile. "How much of a lead does Brent have?" "I'm pulling toll records now. Get back here." The drive back to Phoenix took 38 minutes. Every second felt like betrayal retreating, while Brent drove farther away with my grandson. Celeste sat rigid beside me, tears streaming silently down her face. Prescott met us in the investigation room with a laptop open and printed screenshots spread across the table. Traffic camera stills, timestamp overlays, route maps. Toyota Camry, plate 8TG M493, passed the Buckeye checkpoint at 12:35 p.m., he said, pointing to a grainy image. Tonopah at 2:15 p.m. He's heading toward Quartzsite. "Where's that last Arizona town before the California border? 80 miles past Tonopah." Prescott traced the route on the map. With current traffic and his speed, he could cross the state line by 5:30 p.m. "Multi-state jurisdiction," I said. The coffee I'd drunk hours ago churned in my stomach. "Exactly. California Highway Patrol will have to coordinate. It complicates everything." Celeste leaned forward. "You said traffic camera. Did you see the baby?" Prescott pulled up a video file and hit play. The footage showed the Toyota from an overhead angle, driver's side visible through the windshield. A man, alone. In the back seat, clearly visible, an infant carrier. "Traffic camera timestamp, 2:17 p.m., Prescott said. "Your son-in-law is driving. The baby is in the rear seat." Celeste made a sound I'd never heard before, half sob, half prayer. Our grandson was alive, strapped into a car seat on a desert highway with a man who'd faked his death and drained our accounts. How many steps ahead had he planned this? The false identity, the accomplice, the misdirection. And how many more traps waited between here and the border? "Quartzsite is the last stop before California," I said. "Can you intercept him there?" "Highway Patrol is setting up a checkpoint at the truck scales," Prescott said. "But Warren, if he gets past that checkpoint, we're looking at pursuit into California desert, where backup is 2 hours away." "Then don't let him get past it." Prescott's phone rang. He answered, listened, then pulled up another video file. "Facial recognition just processed the Tonopah footage. You need to see this." The image appeared on screen in high-definition clarity. The driver's face, captured at the toll booth, showed a man I almost didn't recognize. Bleached blonde hair where Brent's had been dark brown. No glasses. The beard he'd worn for 5 years gone. The bone structure was the same. The eyes identical. But the transformation was complete. He looks exactly like the Derek Lansing driver's license photo, Prescott said quietly. He's actively becoming his false identity while driving. I stared at the screen, this stranger who was my son-in-law, this ghost who was stealing my grandson across state lines. The bleached hair caught the desert sun. The infant carrier rocked slightly in the back seat with the motion of the highway. The road stretched endlessly west toward a border I couldn't let him cross. I want to be at that checkpoint, I said. Warren, I'm going to courtside. With or without you. Prescott held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded. I'll call ahead. But you follow my orders when we get there. His radio crackled. Detective Prescott, Quartzsite Highway Patrol. Checkpoint is in position, waiting for the Toyota. Copy that, Prescott said. ETA 2 hours. A second voice cut in. Different frequency. Prescott, this is Buckeye County Sheriff. We've been reviewing earlier checkpoint footage per your request. Go ahead. Camera caught something at 12:38 p.m. we missed on first pass. The Toyota pulled over 3 miles past our checkpoint. Dark blue van with Nevada plates pulled alongside. Window-to-window conversation. Maybe 30 seconds. Van drove off westbound. Toyota followed 2 minutes later. The room went silent. Did you get the plate? Prescott asked. Partial. Running it now. I looked at Celeste. Her face had gone white. He has a partner, she whispered. Someone waiting ahead to take the baby. Prescott was already grabbing his keys. Quartzsite is 158 miles from here. Brent's 80 miles ahead. If he transfers the baby to that van before we get there, we lose him. Prescott started for his cruiser. I grabbed his arm. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. This is an active pursuit. I tracked precision parts through aerospace supply chains for 40 years, I said. I can track one desperate man in a Toyota. Warren, I know how Brent thinks. His patterns, his tells, his decisions under pressure. You need me. Prescott's phone rang. He answered, then put it on speaker. Dad. Celeste's voice came through, shaky but determined. Honey, where are you? I heard everything. Detective, my father will follow you whether you say yes or no. At least in your car he'll have a radio and backup. Prescott looked at me. Mrs. Harding, your father stays in the passenger seat. No heroics. The second this gets tactical, he hits the floor. Understood? Understood, I said. Then came the words that changed everything. Detective, I need to tell you something. I'm not calling from the hospital. Where are you? I checked myself out. Against medical advice. I'm on I-10 westbound, about 15 minutes behind you. Mrs. Harding, that's my son, Celeste said. I'm not staying behind while you chase him toward a border. Bring him home, Dad. The line went dead. I buckled into Prescott's passenger seat at 4:05 p.m., feeling my daughter's voice still hanging in the air like a benediction. The cruiser's engine roared to life. Prescott pulled out with lights flashing but no siren. The laptop mounted between us showed traffic camera feeds and GPS coordinates. 3 highway patrol units were already westbound, tracking the Toyota from a distance. He's maintaining 85 to 90 miles per hour, Prescott said. Steady speed, no erratic driving. He doesn't know we're watching. The speedometer climbed. 75, 85, 95. Desert landscape blurred past. The air smelled like old coffee and leather. My hands gripped the armrests, knuckles white. Prescott's radio crackled at 4:18 p.m. All units. Target vehicle just past Hope Checkpoint doing 87 miles per hour. Single occupant visible. Infant carrier in rear seat. No indication of awareness. Copy, Prescott said. Quartzsite checkpoint. Confirm status. Armed and ready, Detective. We've got spike strips and 4 units. He's not getting through. Before I tell you what happened at that checkpoint, are you still with me? Comment A if you think Brent will surrender. Or B if you think he'll run. and add one short reason why. Quick note, the next part includes some fictionalized details to deepen the emotional impact. The lesson is what matters. I leaned toward the laptop. Scanning camera feeds, mile markers ticked past. Then I saw it. There, I said, pointing. Camera feed from mile marker 112, dark blue van, Nevada plates, pulled off at the rest area. Prescott zoomed in. The van sat alone, engine running. A figure in the driver's seat. Waiting, Prescott said. He grabbed the radio. Quartzsite checkpoint, this is Detective Prescott. Be advised, suspect has accomplice vehicle. Nevada van at mile marker 112. Likely planning transfer, do not let either vehicle leave that checkpoint. Copy that. We'll box them both. How many times had I driven this exact highway on vacation trips with Shirley? Never imagining I would race down it at night, chasing a man who'd stolen my flesh and blood. At 5:47 p.m., darkness swallowed the landscape. Prescott switched to thermal imaging. The Toyota appeared as a white heat signature moving westward. 23 miles from Quartzsite, Prescott said. 47 from the California border. The radio crackled. Detective, this is Highway Patrol Unit 7. We've got intel on that Nevada van. Go ahead. Ran the partial plate-through FBI database. Registered to a shell company in Reno. Owner is flagged female, mid-30s. Suspected of filing 3 fraudulent adoption applications last year under different names. It landed like ice water. Prescott's jaw tightened. Adoption fraud, he said. More than fraud, Detective. FBI thinks she's connected to an interstate trafficking ring. Matches babies with buyers, handles documentation, takes payment. Trafficking ring. Not kidnapping, not fraud, trafficking. My grandson wasn't being stolen, he was being sold. Target vehicle 15 miles from Quartzsite, the radio announced. Maintaining speed. I stared at the thermal image. The white heat signature of the Toyota, the smaller signature in the back seat that was my grandson. 3 days old. Heading toward a checkpoint that would either save him or trigger a chase into the night. The clock read 6:18 p.m. At 6:22 p.m., the radio exploded with static and shouting. All units, Toyota Camry just blew through checkpoint at 103 miles per hour, refused to stop. Officers in pursuit. Prescott's foot slammed the accelerator. The cruiser surged forward. Visual confirmation, Prescott shouted into the radio. Infant carrier still in back seat. Baby inside, driver accelerating westbound. What about the Nevada van? Van pulled out of rest area when Toyota passed, now following westbound approximately 1 mile behind target vehicle. Both vehicles running. Prescott's speedometer hit 110. The highway stretched into darkness, broken only by distant red and blue lights. How far to the border? I asked. 12 miles, Prescott said. If they cross into California before we intercept, the baby disappears into that trafficking network. We'll never find him. The radio crackled with overlapping transmissions units pursuing. California Highway Patrol activating, FBI en route. Through it all, one fact remained. Brent was racing toward the state line at over 100 miles per hour, with my grandson in the back seat. And behind him, a woman who sold babies was following in a dark blue van. 12 miles to the border, maybe 8 minutes at current speed. I could see the pursuit lights ahead now. A constellation of red and blue against the black desert. All chasing the same white Toyota that held everything I had left to lose. The Arizona-California border checkpoint appeared in our headlights at 7:08 p.m., 46 minutes after Brent blew through Quartzsite. A California Highway Patrol officer stood beside the inspection station, radio in hand. His face told me everything before he spoke. "You're looking for the Toyota Camry," he said, not a question. "Arizona plates. 8TGM493, Prescott said, flashing his badge. "Where is he?" "Crossed at 6:34 p.m., doing 97 miles per hour. Single male driver, infant carrier visible in the back seat." Arizona Highway Patrol was in pursuit but had to break off at the state line. Protocol, Prescott said bitterly. The officer nodded. We weren't alerted in time to intercept on our side. He's got a 34-minute head start. 34 minutes. At that speed. Brent could be anywhere within 50 miles. The California desert stretched endlessly westward. A black void punctuated by scattered highway lights. The Nevada van, I said. Did it cross here? Negative. We got word from Ehrenberg checkpoint. 10 miles south. Dark blue van. Nevada plates. Crossed separately 3 minutes after the Toyota. They split up. Prescott's jaw tightened. We're chasing 2 vehicles now. The CHP officer gestured toward his patrol car. There's more. Arizona Highway Patrol lost visual contact with the Toyota at mile marker 3, just past the border. How do you lose a car you're chasing? I asked. It hit like a gut punch. Driver killed his headlights and took an unmarked desert access road into Palo Verde Valley. Patrol couldn't follow without risking civilian safety on unpaved terrain in the dark. He pre-scouted the route, Prescott said quietly. He knew exactly where that access road was. Brent hadn't just run. He'd planned every mile of this escape, the false identity, the decoy in Oak Creek Canyon, the split crossing, the midnight desert turn. In aerospace machining, 34 minutes was the difference between precision and catastrophic failure. Here, it was the difference between finding my grandson and losing him forever. Prescott pulled out his phone and dialed. This is Detective Raymond Prescott, Phoenix PD. I need FBI Phoenix Field Office. Priority. The conversation was brief and technical. Interstate child endangerment. Suspected trafficking network. Federal jurisdiction. When he hung up, his expression had shifted from frustrated to focused. FBI is mobilizing California Field Office resources, he said. They're coordinating with CHP for an expanded search grid covering I-10 from the border to Blythe. How far is that? 32 miles west. The CHP officer's radio crackled with coordination chatter. Units deploying. Search perimeter establishing. Thermal imaging helicopter dispatch from El Centro. ETA 45 minutes. I stared at the dashboard clock. 7:15 p.m. My grandson had been in that car for over 18 hours. The fever Adrian mentioned when she bought the Tylenol. No proper food, no medical care. A 3-day-old baby strapped into a car seat while his kidnapper ran from state to state. How many times had I crossed state lines on family road trips with Shirley and Celeste, never knowing the invisible wall that stopped police cars cold while criminals kept driving. Mr. Caldwell. A new voice. I turned. A woman in an FBI windbreaker approached, phone to her ear. She lowered it. I'm Agent Rourke. Detective Prescott says you know the suspect personally. He's my son-in-law, I said. Was my son-in-law. I need you to tell me how he thinks. Where would he go? What's his endgame? I tried to picture Brent's mind. The man who'd drained accounts and faked a death certificate. He's not running randomly. He has a destination. Probably somewhere he can hand off the baby and disappear. The Nevada van, Agent Rourke said. We think that's his contact. Prescott rejoined us. FBI database just cross-referenced the Nevada van registration. You need to hear this. The answer emerged in the glow of Rourke's tablet screen. A mugshot. A criminal history. A current investigation summary. Sandra Meacham, 41 years old. Rourke read. Convicted in 2019 for illegal adoption brokering in Oregon. Served 18 months. Currently under investigation for operating an unlicensed maternity home in Laughlin, Nevada. Maternity home, I repeated. The words tasted like acid. She finds vulnerable pregnant women. Rourke continued. Offers them housing and medical care in exchange for surrendering their babies after birth. Then she sells the infants to buyers through fraudulent private adoption arrangements. Cash transactions, falsified documents. How much does a baby cost? The question came out hollow. Rourke's expression hardened. 50 to 80,000, depending on the buyer's urgency and the infant's health. I stared into the California darkness where my grandson was disappearing mile by mile and felt the weight of every minute I'd wasted trusting paperwork over instinct. If I'd confronted Brent the first day instead of gathering evidence. If I'd called the FBI instead of the medical examiner's office. If I'd acted on gut instead of procedure. Warren, Prescott's hand on my shoulder. We're moving. FBI has a search plan. We started for Prescott's cruiser. Then at 7:42 p.m., the CHP dispatcher's voice cut through every radio frequency at once. All units, priority alert. Blythe Police Department received a 911 call 8 minutes ago from Desert Palms Motel, 1847 East Hobson Way. Caller reported hearing an infant crying in room 14. Male occupant refused housekeeping service. Paid cash for 2 nights in advance. Manager describes Toyota Camry with Arizona plates in parking space 14. My heart stopped. Blythe PD officers are en route, the dispatcher continued. ETA 4 minutes. Prescott was already in the driver's seat. Blythe is 16 miles west. We can be there in 12 minutes. I jumped into the passenger seat. Agent Rourke climbed into the back. The cruiser launched westward into the California night. Lights flashing, siren wailing. 16 miles between us and room 14 at the Desert Palms Motel. Between us and my grandson. Between us and Brent. Cornered and desperate. 4 minutes until Blythe PD arrived. 12 until we did. In that gap, anything could happen. The Desert Palms lead went cold. Brent had fled before Blythe PD arrived, leaving an empty room and unpaid charges. 4 hours of searching California desert highways followed. Every rest area and gas station a dead end. Then, at 11:47 p.m., my phone rang. Brent's number. I answered on speaker so Prescott and Agent Rourke could hear. Where is he? You're too late. Warren. Brent's voice sounded rehearsed, confident, almost. The baby is gone. Handed off 3 hours ago to a family in Nevada. You're chasing nothing. My chest tightened. If he's gone, why are you calling me? Because Celeste deserves to move on. This is Mercy. His voice cracked slightly on deserves. Go home. Tell her it's over. Stop this before someone gets hurt. Where did you hand him off with? Family. We who can give him a better life than... The line broke up with static and a distinct mechanical grinding sound. Better than we could. Brent. The call ended. I stared at the phone, replaying every word in my mind. Prescott glanced at me. You believe him? No, I said. It crystallized as I processed what I'd heard. That grinding sound in the background, that wasn't road noise. That was mechanical failure. Water pump. Maybe transmission. He wasn't calling from a handoff location, he was calling from a breakdown. Agent Rourke leaned forward from the back seat. Play it again. I replayed the recording. There it was beneath Brent's voice, the unmistakable sound of an engine in distress. 4 days of chasing, 400 miles, and it came down to a phone call I almost believed. He said the baby is gone. I continued, analyzing each word like a precision blueprint. Present tense, not was handed off or was placed, Freudian slip. Prescott's eyes narrowed. You think he still has the infant? I know he does. That call was a Hail Mary. He's out of moves and trying psychology. I looked at Prescott. Which means we're close enough to scare him. Or desperate enough to lie, Rourke said. If the baby was truly gone. Brent would stay silent and let us waste resources searching, I said. Why call to discourage us? Why risk giving away his location? Because he's panicking. Prescott grabbed his radio. All CHP units, intensify rest area searches between Blythe and Desert Center. Suspect vehicle may be disabled. How many men had Brent conned in his financial services career? With that exact tone confident enough to sound truthful, shaky enough to sound human. How many clients had he convinced to make bad investments, while his voice projected authority and his hands drained their accounts? But I'd spent 40 years reading tolerance specifications and identifying mechanical failures. I knew when something didn't fit. The radio crackled at 12:08 a.m. Detective Prescott, this is CHP Unit 12. We've got visual on target vehicle. Prescott nearly dropped the radio. Location, Box Canyon Rest Area. Mile marker 239, 18 miles west of Blythe. Toyota Camry, Arizona plates 8TG-M493, pulled into parking space with hood up. Single male matching suspect description visible with flashlight. Appears to be attempting engine repair. My heart hammered. The baby. Infant carrier visible on ground beside vehicle. Repeat, baby is outside the vehicle. January night in the California desert. Temperatures dropping toward 40 degrees. My grandson had been sick with fever when this started. ETA? Prescott asked. 14 minutes at current speed. Agent Rourke said, checking GPS. Prescott keyed the radio. CHP 12, establish perimeter with lights off. Do not approach. Do not spook the suspect. Hold position until backup arrives. Copy that. Perimeter forming now. Can they hold position without spooking him for 14 minutes? I asked. Prescott's jaw was tight. If he runs on foot into that desert with a sick infant in January cold, we may never find them. CHP will hold silent until we arrive. 14 minutes felt like 14 hours. Every second imagining Brent carrying my grandson into darkness, where flashlights and thermal imaging lose the trail. The speedometer climbed past 90. Desert highway stretched endlessly ahead, broken only by reflective mile markers counting down. Unit 12, status, Prescott called. Suspect still at vehicle. Wait, he's moving around to the rear. Getting something from the trunk. A pause. Then the CHP officer's voice returned. Detective. He's not attempting repairs. He's removing the license plates. Now looks like he's working on the VIN plate on the dashboard. It landed cold and hard. Prescott swore under his breath. He's not fixing the car, I said. He's sanitizing it. Removing identification. Why? Rourke asked. Because he's abandoning it, Prescott said. Getting ready to flee on foot. The radio crackled again. Detective, suspect just picked up the infant carrier. He's walking toward the tree line on the north side of the rest area. How far are we? I demanded. 9 minutes, Rourke said. Prescott grabbed the radio. Unit 12, if suspect enters tree line, move in. Do not let him reach the wilderness with that infant. Copy, standing by. The cruiser screamed through the darkness. Box Canyon Rest Area was remote, a single building, parking area, and desert scrubland stretching for miles. If Brent made it into that wilderness, we'd be searching by helicopter at dawn. Hoping a 3-day-old baby with a fever survived the night. At 12:19 a.m., 11 minutes into our race toward Box Canyon, the radio crackled urgent. All units, suspect is moving, picked up infant carrier, walking toward tree line, speed increasing, he knows we're here. Then, a second transmission. The officer's voice tight with tension. Vehicle approaching from west, no headlights, moving fast. Dark blue van, Nevada plates. Agent Rourke leaned forward. Sandra Meacham, the accomplice, the trafficker, the woman who sold babies for cash. ETA! Prescott shouted into the radio. Van is pulling into rest area now, heading straight for the suspect. Block it, block both vehicles. Units moving to intercept. I could see lights ahead now. Red and blue flashes illuminating the desert night. The Box Canyon Rest Area exit sign appeared in our headlights. 1 mile, 30 seconds. The radio exploded with overlapping voices, units converging. Van stopping, suspect running, infant carrier visible, orders being shouted. Prescott took the exit doing 70, tires screaming as we swung into the rest area. And there, in the chaos of flashing lights and moving figures, I saw my son-in-law running toward a dark blue van with my grandson in his arms. We arrived at Box Canyon Rest Area at 12:24 a.m. to find 8 patrol cars forming a silent perimeter around the disabled Toyota, and in the beam of a single spotlight, Brent Harding frozen mid-step, carrying my grandson toward Sandra Meacham's idling van. "Brent Harding, stop where you are!" The CHP officer's voice cut through the desert night. "Put down the carrier. Hands where we can see them." Brent froze. 20 feet from the van. 10 feet from freedom. The infant carrier dangled from his right hand. I could hear crying, high, weak, but alive. Sandra Meacham stepped out of the van, hands already raising. FBI agents swarmed her immediately, weapons drawn. Agent Rourke's voice was ice. "Sandra Meacham, you're under arrest for interstate trafficking, conspiracy to defraud adoption services, and child endangerment. On the ground, now." Sandra dropped without resistance. Practiced at this choreography, handcuffs clicked. She was lifted and walked toward a federal vehicle, her face blank. Brent stood alone in the spotlight, carrier in hand. Surrounded. "Warren," Prescott said quietly, "stay in the vehicle." I opened the door and stepped out. "Warren, I need to do this." I walked into that spotlight, knowing 40 years of precision machining had taught me one thing when a system fails. You trace it back to the first compromised component, and you face it. Brent's eyes found mine. His bleached hair looked garish under the harsh light, the beard he'd shaved gone. He looked like a stranger wearing my son-in-law's face. "Warren, you don't understand," he said, voice shaking. "I was trying to give him a better life, away from all the debt, the pressure. You were selling my grandson to a trafficking ring to cover $87,000 in gambling debts." I said. "Say it." "It wasn't like that." "Say it." Brent's composure cracked. "It started with one bet. One Sunday afternoon watching football, then I couldn't stop. The crypto investments were supposed to recover everything, but they tanked. The baby," his voice broke. "The baby was supposed to fix everything. New identity, fresh start. Derek Lansing could move anywhere, be anyone. But he kept crying," I said quietly. "And the money ran out. Sandra said she could place him where no one would ask questions. Families who wanted babies but couldn't adopt legally. She said he'd be loved, cared for, and I could disappear with enough money to start over." From the FBI vehicle, Sandra's voice cut through the night. Agent Rourke had her in the back seat, recording her statement. The confession came in Sandra's flat. "Mr. Harding first contacted our network in November 2024. Inquired about private adoption brokers who paid cash and didn't verify parental consent. That's 2 months before the birth. The air left my lungs. November. While Celeste was 7 months pregnant, preparing the nursery, buying clothes, Brent was already shopping for buyers. "You planned this before he was born," I said. Brent's face went white. "No. I was just exploring options." "Put the carrier down," Prescott said, moving closer. "It's over." Brent set the carrier on the ground. The crying intensified. Prescott closed the distance, pulled Brent's arms behind his back, cuffed him. "Brent Harding, you're under arrest for infant endangerment, medical records fraud, conspiracy to traffic a minor, and interstate flight to avoid prosecution." A CHP medic rushed to the carrier. I followed. She lifted the baby out so small, wrapped in a thin blanket, shivering. Her penlight checked his eyes. Her stethoscope listened to his chest. "Body temperature 95 degrees. Dehydrated, but vitals stable," she said. "This baby is a fighter." She wrapped him in an emergency thermal blanket and handed him to me. I held my grandson for the first time. 3 days old. He had Celeste's eyes, dark and wide, and Shirley's nose. His crying softened as warmth surrounded him. $45,000. The price Brent Harding placed on his son's life. "I've got you," I whispered. "You're safe now. Your mama is coming." FBI agents were searching the vehicles. From the Toyota's trunk, they pulled a leather satchel. Agent Rourke opened it on the hood. "Derek Lansing documents," she said, laying them out. "Driver's license, social security card, birth certificate." She counted cash. $31,000 in hundreds. From Sandra's van came more evidence file folders. Burner phones. Forged adoption paperwork. "Warren, we found adoption contracts in the van," Prescott said quietly, walking over. Brent was selling him for $45,000. Enough to cover the crypto losses and fund Derek Lansing's new life. Agent Rourke pulled a notebook from the Toyota's glove box, flipped it open. Her expression hardened. "You need to see this." The proof was written in Brent's own handwriting. A ledger. Mathematical precision. Sale price, $45,000. Broker fee, Sandra, $14,000. Net proceeds, $31,000. Below that, a second calculation: crypto loss, $43,000. Gambling debt, $87,000. Total owed, $130,000. Celeste accounts drained, $24,000. Derek Lansing startup, $31,000 remaining debt, $75,000. He'd priced his own son down to the penny. Calculated exactly how much a baby was worth versus how much freedom cost, and decided freedom was cheaper. If you're reading this and thinking you could never understand how a father sells his child, neither could I, until I watched a man choose erasing debt over holding his son. "The van has files for 6 other infants," Agent Rourke said. "Sandra's been operating this ring for at least 3 years. You just shut down a major trafficking operation." Brent was loaded into the FBI transport vehicle. Through the window, our eyes met. His face showed hollow recognition he'd destroyed everything for nothing. The doors closed. The ambulance arrived, lights flashing. Medics prepared to transport my grandson to Blythe Medical Center. I held him until the last possible second, then handed him to the paramedic. "I'll be right behind you," I said. As the ambulance pulled away, headlights appeared on the eastbound I-10 entrance. A car I recognized. Celeste's sedan. She'd been driving for hours, following us into California. Now she pulled into the rest area to see FBI agents, her husband in handcuffs being loaded into federal transport, and her father standing in the spotlight holding empty emergency blankets. She stepped out of the car. Our eyes met across 50 yards of desert parking lot. I nodded once. I brought him home. Emergency stabilization at Blythe Medical Center took 4 hours. Medical transport back to Phoenix took 3 more. At 2:17 p.m. on January 5th, Celeste walked into the NICU observation room at Banner Good Samaritan Medical Center, 5 days after being told her son was stillborn, and saw him breathing in the warming bassinet with her own eyes. She stopped in the doorway, hand over her mouth. The pediatric nurse stepped aside. "He's stable," the nurse said gently. "Mild dehydration and hypothermia, both resolving with treatment, no lasting damage." Celeste crossed to the bassinet. I stood back, giving her this moment. She reached in with trembling hands and lifted him. 6 pounds of living miracle wrapped in hospital blankets. The baby made a small sound, eyes opening. "Owen," Celeste whispered. Tears streamed down her face. "His name is Owen, after my dad's middle name. Owen Caldwell Harding." I felt Shirley's presence in that room, felt her hand on my shoulder the way she'd touched me 1,000 times. I watched my daughter hold her son, and saw Shirley in every gentle touch, every whispered promise that no one would take him again. The door opened. Adrienne Hayes entered, still in scrubs. She froze when she saw us. I asked to be assigned to his care team, Adrian said quietly. I wanted to make sure he had every resource. But if you'd prefer someone else...
Adrienne,
Celeste said. Owen was nestled against her chest. Come here. Adrian approached hesitantly. Her eyes were red, face drawn. I'm so sorry I didn't speak up immediately, Adrian said. Her voice broke. I was afraid of losing my license, my career. But that's no excuse. I saw a live baby, and I let someone tell me I was wrong. You came forward when it mattered, Celeste said firmly. You helped my father find him. That's what really remember. It came when the hospital administrator, a woman in a dark suit, not Dr. Vreeland, entered with a file. Mrs. Harding? Mr. Caldwell? I'm Jennifer Keogh, interim administrator. I need to share something. She opened the file. On January 2nd, Nurse Hayes filed an internal complaint questioning stillbirth documentation inconsistencies. She specifically cited discrepancies between her delivery room observations and the filed death certificate. I looked at Adrian. She'd tried to expose the fraud 3 days after it happened. Dr. Marcus Vreeland suppressed her complaint, Keogh continued, citing patient privacy protocols. He prevented it from reaching the ethics board or medical review committee. Nurse Hayes attempted to follow proper channels. She was actively silenced by administrative conspiracy. You tried, Celeste said to Adrian. From the beginning, you tried. Adrian's tears fell freely. Celeste shifted Owen to one arm and pulled Adrian into an embrace. Keogh cleared her throat. Dr. Vreeland was arrested this morning by FBI agents. His employment is terminated, and we're pursuing full medical license revocation. This hospital failed you catastrophically. We will cooperate completely with federal prosecution. At 6:30 p.m., we sat in the FBI Phoenix field office conference room. Detective Prescott, Agent Rourke, Adrian, Marlene Foster, everyone who'd helped build the case. A federal prosecutor in her mid-40s laid out folders across the table. Mr. Harding's ledger and communications provide clear premeditation, she said. This is federal trafficking, not impulsive crime. Interstate child endangerment. Falsifying federal documents. Conspiracy to commit human trafficking. Witness intimidation. Identity fraud. Combined exposure, 15 to 20 years, federal prison. And Sandra Meacham, I asked. 25 to life. We've documented 6 cases of infant trafficking through her network over 3 years. Your grandson's rescue shut down a major operation. How does a prosecutor calculate 15 years against 5 days of an infant's terror? Or measure federal sentencing guidelines against a mother who believed her child was dead? Walk me through your investigation timeline, the prosecutor said. From the beginning, I pulled out the notebook I'd kept every date, every discovery, every dollar amount. October 12th, 2024. That's when it started. My daughter called, after a gender reveal ultrasound. Something in her voice was wrong. I didn't know it then, but Brent had decided that day. I traced every step. The midnight hospital call. The medical examiner's office showing no death record. Finding Derek Lansing documents, Phil Hartman's bank records. Adrian's parking lot confession. Marlene's doorbell footage showing 6 weeks of preparation. 400 miles, Prescott added. 5 agencies, 2 states. This case proves why civilian persistence matters when the system hesitates. The prosecutor made notes. Then she looked up. There's something else you need to know. The final revelation came from FBI forensic accounting. An agent pulled up financial records on the conference room screen. Mr. Harding's gambling debts weren't to legal sports books, the agent said. They were to an illegal bookmaker named Victor Russo. Phoenix PD has been investigating Russo's operation for 2 years. Loan sharking, extortion, organized crime. The debts that started everything were not sport bets but mob money. Russo's enforcers contacted Mr. Harding on December 28th, the agent continued. Threatened Mrs. Harding's safety if the debt wasn't paid by February 1st. Phone records show Brent accelerated the trafficking plan after that threat. His escape wasn't just greed. It was desperate flight from criminal violence. Celeste's hand found mine across the table. Does that change the charges? I asked. It adds context, the prosecutor said. But it doesn't excuse selling an infant. We finished at 9:42 p.m. Celeste and I walked out into the Phoenix night, exhausted. Detective Prescott caught up with us in the parking lot. Warren, Celeste, there's something you need to know. We stopped. Brent's federal public defender filed a motion this afternoon, Prescott said. He's offering a plea bargain, full testimony against Sandra Meacham's trafficking network and Victor Russo's bookmaking operation. Names, locations, financial records, communications, everything, in exchange for reduced sentence. Celeste's grip on my arm tightened. How reduced? I asked. 8 to 10 years instead of 15 to 20, Prescott said. The prosecutor wants your input before deciding. Brent's cooperation could dismantle 2 major criminal operations and save other victims. But it means he serves less time for what he did to your family. Prescott looked at us both. He's asking for a chance to cooperate. The question is whether you can accept that. We'd told the prosecutor to accept the plea bargain. Justice for our family mattered less than saving other victims. 1 week later, I found Celeste standing in what used to be Shirley's sewing room on January 12th, holding Owen and staring at the empty walls like she was trying to imagine a future that didn't include the man who tried to sell her son. I can't go back to that house, Dad, she said. Every room has his lies in it. This house has plenty of space, I said. Shirley always wanted grandchildren filling these rooms. Are you sure? I'm certain. Moving her belongings from the Desert Vista house took 2 days. Marlene Foster helped, bringing boxes and refusing to let Celeste lift anything heavy. The house felt like a crime scene, every drawer potentially hiding another secret. In Brent's home office, behind a false panel in his desk, I found it. A leather journal. Entries dating back to July 2024. July 18. Down $12,000 on Sunday games. Russo says I have until August to pay or the VIG doubles. August 3. Crypto play failed. Lost another $18,000. Total hole now $43,000. Celeste can't know. September 21. Gender reveal today. It's a boy. Celeste is crying happy. I'm calculating exit strategies. Baby due in 8 weeks. Could disappear with newborn. Sell through adoption broker. Clear 40 to 50K. Celeste too honest to go along. She'd report me immediately if she knew. It sat heavy in my hands, written proof that Brent had evaluated his wife's character and decided she was too moral to include in his scheme. I showed Celeste the journal that evening. She read 3 entries, then handed it back. Burn it, she said. I don't need to know how long he lied, but I kept it. Evidence. Insurance against future denials. The spare bedroom transformed over the next week. Celeste painted the walls soft blue. I assembled the crib, hands remembering how to read instructions. Celeste hung a mobile of stars and moons above it. Mom saved this, I said, recognizing it from the attic. She bought it when you told us you were pregnant the first time. Before the miscarriage, Celeste said softly. She never threw it away. Said someday there'd be a baby who needed it. I watched my daughter hang that mobile. Watched her choose hope over trauma. And understood why Shirley had saved it for 15 years. Owen had colic. The pediatrician said it was normal after the stress his body had endured. Most nights between 2 and 4 a.m., he screamed inconsolably. Celeste walked circles, exhausted and crying herself. Here, I said one night at 3:17 a.m. Let me show you your mother's trick. I took Owen, positioned him against my chest at a slight angle, and bounced gently while humming low, a rumbling sound more felt than heard. Within 90 seconds, the crying stopped. "How?" Celeste whispered. "Shirley said babies need to feel the vibration in your chest. It reminds them they're not alone." "He would have been a good grandfather to her," Celeste said. "I'm glad Owen will know you the way I knew Mom." Marlene brought casseroles twice a week, always with offers to babysit. Other neighbors left groceries on the porch. Sun City West rallied around the family they'd watched on the news. Celeste returned to work part-time on January 15th. Home health aide, 3 shifts per week. I provided childcare while she was gone. Learning Owen's rhythms, memorizing his cries. The grandson bond I'd fought across state lines to create was forming in quiet morning hours and bottle feedings. The FBI prosecutor called January 19th at 4:47 p.m. "Brent accepted the plea agreement," she said. "Guilty to all federal charges. Senate 18 years federal prison. No parole eligibility for 12 years. Mandatory restitution of $31,000 to Mrs. Harding." Celeste was feeding Owen. I put the phone on speaker. His testimony against Sandra Meacham secured her conviction. The prosecutor continued. 25 to life. We also dismantled the bookmaking ring, 8 arrests total. 6 other families got their children back because of his cooperation. "I don't forgive him," Celeste said, "but I'm glad other babies are safe." How does a father surrender rights to a son he priced at $45,000? With relief that the evidence disappeared, or shame that it ever existed? "There's one more thing," the prosecutor said. "The plea agreement includes permanent surrender of parental rights." Mr. Harding signed documents terminating all legal claim to Owen. "Mrs. Harding, you have sole custody with no future interference." Mr. called. "You've been granted legal grandparent guardianship rights if anything happens to your daughter." It settled over us like unexpected grace. Brent had erased himself completely. 18 years, I said after the call ended. Owen will be in college before Brent gets out. He'll never know his father as anything but a cautionary tale. 18 years. Long enough for Owen to forget the man who carried him into the California desert existed at all. "Dr. Vreeland got 5 years, Celeste said. "That's it." "He'll lose his medical license permanently," I said. "His career is over." 2 days later, a certified letter arrived. I signed for it at the door, saw the return address, B. Harding, FCI Florence. Florence, Arizona. Celeste saw the envelope when she came downstairs. Her face went pale. "Burn it," she said. "Don't open it. Don't read it. Just burn it." I held the envelope. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, identical to the Derek Lansing documents I'd found months ago. "Celeste, he doesn't get to explain. He doesn't get to apologize. He doesn't get one more word." Her voice was steel. "Promise me you won't read it." I looked at the envelope. One more truth left to confess, or one more lie to tell. "I promise," I said. But that night, alone in my bedroom, I put the unopened letter in my desk drawer next to Brent's journal, just in case. On a Thursday morning in May, 4 months after the night I thought I lost everything, I woke to the sound of my grandson laughing in the kitchen and my daughter singing off-key to a radio I'd forgotten this house even had. The letter had stayed in my desk drawer for 3 days before I opened it. One sentence. Brent's careful handwriting. "I am sorry I made you choose between your daughter and your grandson when you loved them both enough to save them from me." I'd burned it that afternoon. Not because I'd promised Celeste, I'd already broken that promise by opening it. I burned it because she didn't need Brent's absolution to heal. And neither did I. The weight of that confession sat lighter now as I walked into the kitchen and found Celeste making pancakes while Owen sat in his high chair covered in yogurt. "Dad, you're spoiling him," Celeste said, pointing to 3 new board books on the counter. "He doesn't need more books. Your mother spoiled you with books, I said. Look how you turned out. Owen saw me and shrieked with delight. 4 months ago, I'd stood in a hospital being told my grandson was dead. And now he was laughing at me while wearing yogurt like war paint. The house had transformed. Baby gear occupied corners where Shirley's decorations used to sit. Photos covered the refrigerator Owen at 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. The spare bedroom was now a nursery painted soft blue. The silence that had echoed after Shirley's death had been replaced by purpose. Owen knew my footsteps now. He'd stop crying the second I walked into a room. Would only nap against my chest and no one else's. Would reach for my calloused hands over Celeste's smoother ones when he wanted to be picked up. Some mornings I caught myself talking to him the way I used to talk to Shirley, narrating the coffee, the weather, the plans for the day. And he'd watch my mouth move like he was memorizing the sound of me. I'm thinking about that nursing program, Celeste said. If you're serious about helping with Owen during classes. I'm serious. Night classes start in August, 2 years for the degree. I'll be here. We'll be fine. Marlene Foster arrived at 10 with a casserole and what she called just a few things, for Owen 6 outfits and a stuffed giraffe taller than he was. She'd become an honorary grandmother, stopping by weekly, insisting on babysitting every Friday. At 2 p.m., I drove to Greenwood Memory Cemetery. I brought the photo Celeste had printed Owen at 4 months, sitting up on his own, grinning with 2 bottom teeth showing. Shirley's headstone was simple gray granite. I placed the photo against it and sat on the bench I donated after her funeral. You would love him, Shirl, I said. He has your stubbornness. Cried for 40 minutes yesterday because Celeste wouldn't let him eat the TV remote. The desert wind smelled like creosote and dust. Celeste is strong like you were, I continued. She's going back to school. Nursing degree. Says she wants to help people the way Adrian helped her. I placed wildflowers at the base of the headstone, the purple desert blooms Shirley had loved. I burned the letter. You would have told me to. Some doors stay closed. If you are a grandparent reading this, know that your instincts matter more than official paperwork, and love is stronger than any lie someone can write on a certificate. Celeste asked me yesterday if I ever regret not remarrying after you passed, I said. I told her you set the bar too high. A hawk landed on a nearby saguaro. Thank you for the moral compass, I said. For teaching me that when something doesn't make sense, you don't accept easy answers. I followed your voice through every step of this. I sat until the shadows grew long, then drove home. Evening settled over Sun City West with warmth that made you forget January ever existed. Instead of frozen dinners and cable news, Celeste cooked chicken while I fed Owen mashed peas. The radio played classic rock. Laughter filled rooms that had been silent too long. Prescott called this afternoon, Celeste said. Sandra Meacham's trafficking network trial finished. 11 convictions total. They estimate 20 children returned to families because of our case. 20 children. 20 families who didn't have to drive 400 miles across state lines chasing ghosts. They want to use our case in FBI training. Celeste continued. How grandparent persistence broke a trafficking ring. I wasn't persistent, I said. I was terrified. There's a difference. Dad. I never said it enough, thank you. For not giving up. For believing me when the hospital said I was wrong. For bringing my son home. The January storm had passed, leaving behind the kind of clarity that only comes after you've stood in the cold long enough to remember why warmth matters. We ate dinner on the back patio as the sun dropped toward the Estrella Mountains. The same view I'd stared at that freezing January night when the midnight call came. But where dread had lived then, warmth lived now. Celeste pulled an envelope from her pocket. I need to show you something. She handed me court documents, officially stamped and dated May 12, 2025. The final page appeared in legal language, petition for minor name change. Approved. Owen Caldwell Harding to Owen Caldwell. Surname changed. He carries your name now, Celeste said quietly. Yours and Mom's. The legacy that matters. I held the papers, feeling the weight of what she'd given me, not just a name, but a promise that Owen would grow up knowing the grandfather who'd fought to bring him home, not the father who'd tried to sell him. Owen sat on my lap, 7 months old now, reaching for the sunset like he could hold the light in his hands. Celeste pulled out her phone and took a photo of my grandson and me, silhouetted against orange and gold sky. Perfect, she whispered. Owen grabbed my finger with the kind of grip that said he knew exactly who I was and what I meant to him. The midnight cry that started everything felt like a lifetime ago. But the lesson stayed when you hear someone you love calling for help in the darkness. You don't hesitate. You don't wait for permission. You run toward them with everything you have. The May sunset painted the desert in colors Shirley would have loved. And I thought this is what she saw when she looked at our family. Not the storms we would face, but the light we would find on the other side. And to you listening to my story, remember this when someone you love needs you. Instinct matters more than paperwork. Looking back, I almost made the worst mistake accepting what I was told instead of trusting what I felt. That midnight call could have ended with me consoling my daughter and moving on. But something felt wrong. If I'd ignored that instinct, my grandson would be lost forever. Don't wait too long to act when your gut tells you something is wrong. This wasn't a revenge story. It was a rescue. People think what I did was about punishing Brent, but they're wrong. Every mile I drove was about bringing Owen home. I believe God gave me that restless feeling for a reason. That instinct that wouldn't let me sleep. Yes, justice came. But this was never a revenge story. It's a reminder that love doesn't give up, even when the system says it's over. Family is who shows up in the darkness. If this story moved you, leave a comment. Have you ever had to fight for someone you love? Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Your support means everything. Thank you for staying until the very end. Some details have been adjusted for storytelling and privacy.